Yeah, and I don't know how we come up with it, dude, but it's like, it's just, we're incredible.
Yeah, yeah. It's just what it's like to be us. I mean, they say those that can do, those that can't teach, and those who can't teach become consultants. So I don't know where that leaves us, but I'm thinking somewhere amongst all those three, we're in there somewhere.
We just had a whole show, or just an interesting green room thing. So
Discussion. Yeah.
yeah,
If you guys knew what happened behind closed doors,
it'd be a
yeah,
riot.
you'd be scared. You'd be scared, but and you'd be very right to be scared, but that's okay. Welcome to the Trampled Underfoot podcast, coming to you live, 100% coast to coast and GMO free. At least I am.
That's right.
100%
GM,
organic and free range.
yeah, GMO. That wasn't that a car maker brand?
Yes, General Motors Overland or
Operation.
something. Operation. There you go. That's it. So, what's going on in the Sunshine State?
It's really warm here, but we know that already. I'm gonna throw this out just from the gecko,
Okay, from the get
um,
go. Yeah. All right.
and then we can lead into what you had, because mine is just a simple thing, but a curiosity.
Okay.
Um, Rummaging through, or roaming through the comments and stuff throughout social media, um, somebody had posted that another factory or food plant type thing
Uh huh.
had gone up in flames. Another one.
Okay.
And there's conspiracies of, there's so many going up in flames, and all that. But I found it curious, and so I went down and read the comments, and here's the thing: a lady says, "Well, I like natural food, so I really don't care. It's not a bad thing that it happened." I'm paraphrasing her,
Yeah.
and I didn't say a thing. I just kept going, but it made me stop for half a second and just think of the arrogance and short-sightedness and full of themselves, and lack of consideration of only their particulars a
Hmm.
person could be, that said, that would say such a thing, because she said something to the effect of, "Oh, because I buy organic and this and that, and I really don't go for the hormone stuff and stuff, so might as well, this and that." And I'm like, so how about all the other people that rely on substance, that don't, that your criteria is that you can afford, they can't, and canned foods and such are, how about that? Well, no consideration. And so I just pose that. What are your
Well,
thoughts?
my number one thought right off the bat is how spoiled we are. And as you said, arrogant we are. I mean, let's think about that. We are so spoiled. We have so many choices. We can be picky. We can be choosy. There are places all over the world where people would give away their children for that kind of food, for any kind of food. And we are so spoiled and so filled with first world problems that we can turn our noses up at stuff like that.
Here's a brand new 53-inch TV.
Right.
Take take my twins. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, no, not even that. I mean, it's not even the possessions. It's just clean water and having enough food to where you're not, dying. You're not starving yourself to death. But
Yeah,
we have so much on demand 24/7. We can afford to turn our noses up to something because we don't like it. You
honey,
know,
honey, how many kids do we have left? I don't know, but we have a ton of cereal boxes in
yeah,
storage.
you know. I mean, that's just, and yes, it is an arrogant position to take.
Yeah,
Well, it doesn't affect me because I don't eat that kind of stuff. No, but millions
right,
of people do.
right. I
You
mean,
know,
it's just amazing.
sure.
It's an amazing statement. It's such an amazing statement to say publicly,
Hmm.
and it shows such lack of self-reflection. Like the mirror is always turned away from that person.
Of course, of
It's
course.
just incredible. I mean, we all have moments
Hmm.
because a human being is so many different things. We were talking about that in the green room. There's
Yeah,
variations, but my goodness, I just
yeah.
found it shocking and not shocking. I thought to myself, of course, there's people that are going to think this,
Hmm.
but at the same time, it's like,
Yeah.
wow,
The town next door to me is burning, but I don't care because it's not in this town. I'm fine. Let's go get some. Let's go down and get ice cream.
yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, so fair enough that like life goes on and this and that, but this lady was saying was do adding even more to it by saying, yeah, but it people are better off that way because all that
Yeah.
stuff is like unnaturally grown and such and this and it's like it's just unbelievable.
Ma'am, putting a seed in the ground is not natural. Putting it there on purpose is not
Yeah,
natural.
right.
Watering it when it needs water, that's not natural. You're supposed to wait for the rain to do all that.
Yeah.
You know,
If we took that attitude, we
they
would
don't
never.
they don't get it. I mean, they don't understand. I mean, now I'm I I don't go out of my way to buy organic, but I will say that there is a case to be made for organic foods in that if you're talking about fresh produce, generally speaking, the quality is a lot better. Like if you shop in your grocery store and you go over and you look at the regular tomatoes, then you go over and you look at the organic tomatoes, the difference is night and day. You got a fresh, ripe, plump tomato versus one of those pink tennis balls they're trying to sell at half the price. Now, you're going to pay more for it, but the difference is night and day. I mean, the quality is so much better.
I have to tell
It's
you
up
this.
to you if you want to spend the price for it. So,
Talking about prices and this and that.
mhm.
I visited for the first time in a while, and it was packed to the brim.
Yeah.
It was the place to be, Mark.
Mhm.
It was the happening place. I haven't been for a while. I went to
Were
the
they
dollar
giving
store.
out Twinkies or something?
Well, no, I went to the dollar store.
Oh,
And
geez.
but Mark, in the past,
Mhm.
there was roughly casual
Uh-huh.
traffic in and out,
Mhm.
but now the dollar store is like
Well,
a big deal. And but I went in for a couple of things, and now things are a dollar and a quarter.
really? In the dollar store, they're a dollar and a quarter.
Yeah, they on the rack, dollar and a quarter.
Wow. Wow. You know what?
So
I haven't been to the dollar store here in a while. I don't know. I'm gonna have to go look. But some of that stuff you got to watch out for because I mean, especially if you get back over in the food, like you look over here and you're like, oh wow, a can of this. This is only $1. Well, okay, fine, let's grab a couple. But then you go to the grocery store and you find them at the grocery store for 88 cents. It's like, so how was that dollar? We hear dollar and we think, oh, it's cheap. But no, it's actually more expensive.
at the same time, it depends on the product because at the same
Yeah.
time, um, you know the paint rollers.
Hmm.
I got one of them, and at your Home Depot, you're looking at $4 and up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Granted, you get better quality at the Home Depot, but you pay more and such and this and that. But whatever, I got that.
Mhm.
And I also got some toilet bowl cleaner,
Uh-huh.
which at the store would be easily $5-6
Uh-huh.
for the same size thing. So there are things that
You mentioned that there is a cleaner that they sell. We here the closest one to us. Well, no, I take that back. They just opened up a Dollar General not too far from here. Our first one, but we go to the Dollar Tree, and there is a cleaner, and I can't remember what it's called, Absolutely Fabulous or Totally Amazing or something like that. That's a good cleaner. It's a good degreaser. It works, and it
Simply
is cheap.
Simply
No,
Green
no, not Simple Green. No, not that.
or
Um,
Simple Green, yeah.
this is it's called Absolutely Fabulous or something like that. I don't remember, but it
Fabuloso.
no, not Fabuloso. It's just yellow. It comes in a little trigger spray bottle, and there's
Yeah.
red print on the little trigger spray bottle, and I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it works real well, and it's cheap enough. I don't mind going out and spraying it on, like, greasy parts or what have you, to clean them up. It really works well. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird. The whole dollar store thing. I mean, you can lose yourself in that joint. I mean, I do buy some stuff there for like out in the shop or what have you, because I'll need a resealable container, and I don't want to go shop at the department store or the big box where
It's a
Linda
lot of
gets,
money.
well, no, where she gets stuff for the kitchen. I don't want to confuse it.
Yeah.
I don't want to mix up. I don't want to pour paint thinner in it, and be cleaning something with it, and then find out that that's where she's putting the leftover turkey slices is in the same container I had paint thinner in. So I
Yeah.
go get something completely different,
Yeah.
measuring spoons and measuring cups and what have you. So I can keep it separate and distinct. So, I'd say about a quarter of my stuff out in the shop, or have Betty Crocker labels on them and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, containers are so useful.
Mhm.
Let me throw one last one.
Okay.
I think this is the trifecta of the three things that were swimming in my mind. Although I told you one, but
Okay.
whatever. I also ran into a video
Mhm.
which was a police cam that was released by the police
Mhm.
just like in these past few days. I would say from Orlando, Florida,
Mhm.
and what it was that the police was doing the rounds at the mall, and he had seen a guy with a container, talking about containers, that appeared to be alcohol. So he was drinking and in public and so on and so forth. And he was talking to some girls. They're trying to pick up girls and this and that. The guy was like a young guy,
Mhm.
tattoos and such, but he didn't necessarily give off a thug like appearance. But the tattoos, usually when you see a lot of tattoos, I know that this is a um, yeah, you have to wonder because the guy's very young and he's got tattoos. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? I just
Mhm.
it is something that you see and observe. There's lots of people with tattoos that there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with it at all. But the point is that so the cop stopped him, and it's all on cam. And he says, well, the contain is it, you can't be drinking here. And what's your do you have an ID? No, I don't have my ID. And so you were talking to girls and you have containers of alcohol, and it says, well, I do ask them their age before anything, but no, just and they're back and forth and this and that. And it was a casual. He was concerned, the person that was stopped, but there was no elevated anything. And he says, well, listen, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the mall because you have the container and stuff, and I could arrest you, but I'm not going to do that. So go ahead. And he says, well, there's a door over there and there's one over there. He says, you pick, but you got to go. He says,
Mhm.
okay. So he starts walking. um they go through one of the big anchor stores
Mhm.
and out into the front where the anchor store is.
Mhm.
And the cop is following behind, so you could see the guy. And he says, oh, by the way, what do you have in that fanny pack? Because he had a shoulder strapped fanny pack slash
Yeah.
whatever, man purse or whatever the heck you want to call it. Indiana Jones archaeology. And he says, I just got my things there and stuff. Do you have anything illegal in there? Do you have any drugs? Do you have any of this and that? And he says, well, no, no, just I have things that I have to just take home with me. And he says, can I see? The officer says, can I see? And he says, well, I don't have to. and he says, "But can I see?" And he says, "Oh, I don't want you to do that." And he said, and the officer says, "Well, I know that you have marijuana in there because I had seen in this and that. Is that true? Is it just a little bit?" And the guy says, "Well, it's just a little bit, but I smoked it all already, so no." Right when he said that, he gave the officer the okay by admitting
Uh-huh.
that it was time to check his that he could check his stuff. He opened the door in
Yep.
that conversation. So he says,
That's probable cause. Yeah.
right, because now you're admitting you can't search a person. He opened the door with the probable cause. Um, and he says, "Hand me over the let me look." And he says, "No, don't. Come on, please don't." He says, "Let me look." He says, don't make this something more than it's not supposed to be." And he says, "No, please, officer, don't, no." And he says, "Hand it over." And as the officer approaches, the guy turns and runs away out towards the parking lot, stops at the foot of where the curb and the parking lot begins, turns around, pulls a gun,
Mm.
points it at the officer. We have the camera of the
Mm.
officer because that's the camera that was video that was released, and he starts to unload rounds straight at the officer. The officer, he freaks out and he ends up in the. I'm fixing my for some reason my video just took a crash. He fell into the bushes. You know how they usually at the entrances have like two
Yeah.
little bushes. He fell into some of the bushes, so you can see the struggling and stuff.
Yeah. He's diving for cover.
He diving for cover because it was crazy, and he didn't shoot back because there were people. There was a lady sitting on a bench next to
Uh-huh.
where the guy had run up to, and he unloaded that, and he started to take off. The officer apparently didn't get hit, got up, and started chasing him, and it escalated where it ends up like a block over across the main highway and so on, where there's like a olive garden
Mm-hmm.
type thing, or literally, and he got into another shootout with another cop, and apparently, I don't know this for a fact, the guy bit the big one, the suspect guy.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know if it was from, they said, from officer fire, or self-inflicted, or that he tripped and fell and shot himself. It's unknown. So I was left with that question mark. Anyways, long story short, what I found incredibly uh, strange and and eye-opening is that this person looked, even with the tattoos, still looked like a young guy
Mm-hmm.
that you wouldn't automatically assume would freak out in such a way, and yet it was insanity from 0 to like 12 on the dial. And so it was shocking because the guy, there was nothing to indicate, but once he saw that whatever he had in his bag, he had to produce it, the script changed and he went the way he did. Very, very weird. So like basically you don't, no matter how nice a person, you don't know.
No, you just don't know. That is very, very true. You don't know the person, you don't know their story, you don't know their mindset,
Hmm.
you don't know a thing. And the worst part of it is you don't know what's going to set them off,
Yeah.
because it could be the most innocent thing. Now, confrontation with the law, that's not an innocent thing, obviously, in his context anyway. But if he'd have just said, "No, this is just my stuff," and kept it at that, it'd have probably never gotten to it. But if he wouldn't have been walking around a mall with liquor, it wouldn't have gotten to that. So,
Yeah. Well,
you
no,
have to wonder about that. But
he was a ticking time bomb
yes.
then and before that, because whatever things were happening in his life or upbringing or combination or some sort of handicap with internally or some psychosis, just any number of factors or altogether,
Right.
that person was ultra dangerous because they're willing
Yes.
to shoot. They are willing to shoot in public where many people are at.
Yeah. To keep from answering questions about what's in the bag, you know, and
Yeah.
logic goes right out the window. Has anything ever turned out good from doing things like that?
Well, that's the problem, Mark. I
Has
always,
anything, you have to wonder about that. You know, people want to fight, they want to argue. Has it ever turned out well?
I wonder if, okay, so I don't know about you. I'm assuming that this is going to
Okay.
be true for you as well. I'm assuming it. I
Yeah.
think I would, but you don't even need to be in a bank heist in real life.
Uh-huh.
You could watch one on TV throughout the 40 plus, 50 plus years of one's life
Mhm.
to sort of start to put the pieces of the puzzle together, that the bad guys and the good guys are here, and and you start to sort of massage away the idea that it's bad news.
It's not going to end well.
It's not going to end well. But so who are these people
Well,
that
you
just,
know,
it doesn't register, dude?
but you see it all the time. I mean, think of police chases, high speed pursuits. You're going to run from the cops. Has that ever worked?
Never. I mean, it may. It, well, wait a second. I was gonna say it may have years ago, and it probably did in some cases.
It may have once or twice. You may have gotten away, but do you really think that you're just now going to drive home and go back to your regular life and there's not going to be anybody sitting there waiting for you at your house? Do you really think that it's over?
Yeah, there's no way.
It's not over. It's never ever ended well.
No.
So, you know, it's just like pull over. You've got a warrant. Okay, you're probably going to go away for a while, but you'll get that put behind you. You know, I mean, is running, I don't, nothing good ever comes from it.
Yeah, I don't know. There has to be so many. Well, I'll tell you. Going back half a second with the um, what is it? You never know
Mm-hmm.
who is in front of you and what the
Yeah.
possibilities are, regardless of how
Mm-hmm.
decent and polite. Although I must say, there's some people that don't hide it too well and stuff, and there's ticking
Yeah.
bombs and so on and so like there's people that are decent and it oozes out of them because they're polite and such. Um, so more often than not, you would assume that they're polite and stuff until they explode. But I'll say this: I kind of have always, one thing I've always liked about Clint Eastwood. I know this is a segue that's weird, but we're still in the same camp. One thing I've always liked about Clint Eastwood, especially in his Western movies, as the man with no name,
Uh-huh.
and I never thought about it until you start getting on and you start placing things in together in your mind. Um, any town or any journey he took, anytime he encountered somebody, he always had that the he was
The look.
his teeth, and he'd always, like, his eyes, he'd always turn and he'd look slightly when the person was saying something. It doesn't matter who the person was, and he'd stay quiet, but he's looking around. There's a certain thing, the look,
Uh-huh.
like he's paying attention and stuff, and like he doesn't say much and stuff, but he'll act.
He's taking it all in.
He I believe understood, we're talking about the movies and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
whatever, the character, he understood the dangers of everybody around him as he traveled through the old west,
Yeah.
and the potential for and I liked that. And so you could pick up on that as you were watching the movies, because he'd always grin his teeth and he'd turn and he'd look at whoever's talking to him and stuff. And so he had that psychology about him
Mhm.
without saying it. Whatever, what were we gonna say?
Yeah. Oh, nothing. I oh wow. I was going to say something. I can't remember what it was. You were talking about before you got into Clint Eastwood. I had a
That
point to make.
movies that you watch movies and you realize
No,
that
it was
there was a
before
good.
that, but I can't remember. I can't remember what it was. You said something, and I was going to add to it because I agreed with you. I was going to add to it, and I can't remember what it was. So it must not have been important.
Oh,
But
it was important at the time.
the psychology of never knowing, you know, who's going to go off, when they're going to go off, how they're going to go off. Oh, I do too. Remember, we were talking about that. How you were talking about how a person can be nice and polite and everything else. You know people like this. I know people like this. Perfectly fine. Nice guy. Real easy going until they get in the car. They get behind the wheel, they becoming flaming,
Lunatics, madmen.
yes, screaming at the car in front of them and screaming at the guy behind them and just driving like a maniac, lead foot, and just, get moving, And, but then they get out of the car and just, oh, okay, hi, how you doing? Ha ha ha, yeah, great, great, great,
Yeah,
great. But the personality shift happens the minute they get behind the wheel. And I just, and you, if you've never ridden with them before, that
you
can be a
wouldn't know it.
scary situation. That can be a scary situation if you've never been in the car before. I mean, I know a couple of people, or I knew them down in Nevada, that I would not get in the car with them just because they looked to me like they had that personality. Just talk to one person, be just fine and nice, and somebody walk in the door. Oh, I hate that asshole. And it's like, yeah, I'm never getting in the car with you.
Yeah,
I am never getting in the car with you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's danger lurking.
Mm-hmm. So, oh
Um,
man.
yeah, there's danger lurking with that. I was gonna say something too, and I forgot just on the
Well,
heels of what you had said.
we
Oh
all do it. Go ahead.
no, go ahead,
I was gonna
because you
say
might forget yours.
Jim Dockrell said, I taught my kids to say, pick a lane, you jerk off, when they were young. We all do it. I mean, you're sitting there at the red light, the light turns green in the car in front, he's on his phone or something like that, he's not paying attention.
Yeah,
You're like, push all the pedals, one of them's the gas, that kind of thing. We've all done it.
yeah, but
But,
let me.
you
I
turning
don't.
left or are you turning right? What are you doing?
I don't know if this happens in your area. It's probably more prevalent here because there's more people. But one of the things that, and by the way, and we're all human beings, and you don't know what's going through a person's mind. That's why I have to be
Sure.
so aware of things. One of the things that I don't like about drivers is that when you're about to turn on a light,
Uh-huh.
like to make a left, let's say, and the arrow changes and the cars start going. Some people, especially if they're the first ones out the gate,
Yeah.
take their sweet ass.
Yeah.
They start, and you're trying to leave
Mm-hmm.
with that group because that thing is going to change again, and you're stuck there and stuff. But that first person is, and whenever I'm the first in line, I'm aware that I could be the person in the back.
Yep.
So I briskly take off and go to
And
give other people a chance. In my mind, I could screw up every now and then, but you get the point.
that's 2/3 of driving. Get out of the way. That it doesn't matter if you're first in line or if you're last in line. You are in somebody else's way. Get through the intersection and get out of the way.
But
That's all.
just sitting there and like
Mm-hmm.
the light change, so let's go slowly. Okay, let's start to turn
Yeah.
the wheel.
Zero regard for anybody behind you. I get to turn. Sorry about you. Get out
Mhm.
of the way.
Yeah.
Just get out of the way. If you're afraid of it, park it and walk. But get out of the way. Push all the pedals. One of them is the gas.
Have you ever had? Let me ask you this. I have SUV type things,
Mhm.
but have you ever had this situation? Since I have that, and some cars are smaller than mine,
Uh-huh.
and so they'll be behind me, right? The
Uh-huh.
light will change, and so they'll see traffic moving,
Mm-hmm.
but the car in front of me is not yet moving, and they think that I'm just sitting there. And I'm
Uh-huh.
waiting for the jerk in front of me to go, and the guy in the back is like, as if I'm stalling. And it's like, dude,
Mm-hmm.
and you never have a chance in traffic to say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, dude, it wasn't me. Can't you see that there's and they'll pull out,
Mm-hmm.
once there's enough room, and they'll go, and as they're passing by, I ever wonder myself if that person looked over and saw that there was a car in front of me that was acting like a jerk, slow, and then said, "Oh well, okay, I screwed up, and I blame that guy," and kept going. I wonder sometimes these things
it
as I'm
it
driving.
has happened to me. And one time it was a case of instant karma. One time, and I was driving a truck for work, and the dude just basically the same thing you're talking about, laid on the horn and then hauled around me and took off.
Right.
The car in front of me was a sheriff.
Oh.
So the bubblegum machine went on and over he was pulled. So
Oh
it
boy.
was, instant karma. You got to be careful. There was one time I was coming back, I was in a minivan. I was driving the route for the slot machine company I worked for, working on slot machines. And I was headed back to the shop for the night. And this car come whiz banging up, but I could see him in the rearview mirror. We're talking lonely Nevada highway. And he come, I could see him coming, and he was moving. He was hauling, and he got up behind me. I'm doing the speed limit because probably, maybe a quarter mile ahead of me was a Nevada State Police patrol car. And the sun was hitting just right. It was going through the red and blue light up on the roof.
Yeah.
And he got up behind me, and we were on a corner. We got around to the straight, and he swung around next to me and saw that light coming through those red and blue lights, and he backed off the gas,
Yeah.
backed off behind me, and stayed back several car lengths behind me. Figured out, oh, that's why he's going so slow. I better slow down.
Yeah.
So cop didn't pull off, cop didn't get in, didn't do anything, but it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, you see, now you know why I'm doing exactly the speed limit.
Yeah. He figured it all out very quickly.
Yeah. Because you just knew he was going to pull up and give me the finger or do whatever until he saw that little red and blue light glowing in the sun. And he's like, oh, that explains everything. Let me just back off here and slow down. I think we can take our time. I
Dude.
don't get it. I mean, you can tell they're just in a hurry. They're just in a hurry
Yeah.
to get someplace so they can screw something up. So it's like, I don't know.
Well, my dad, in that way, I'm very I'm very different than my dad in that way. It didn't matter. He would get in the car. Like, I want to get to where I'm going. So,
Mhm.
but he'd get in the car and he'd take his time. He turns on the radio, he gets his cigarette, sits down and stuff. All right, son, let's go. And I'm already like shaking, like I want to get to. And he's taking his time. He turns on and he goes, and everything, and cars are passing by, and he's taking his time throughout the whole thing. And I'm like, Dad, I said, son, we'll get there when we get there. We're not going to get there any faster going. We're not going to get there any faster by going faster. And I couldn't. And I was like, well, no, if you go faster, you get there faster. And what he was trying to suggest is that, or at least I connected these dots. There's a bunch of cars that are doing, it's like a chess game or some sort of,
Uh-huh.
and they're turning and shifting lanes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you're fighting, you know, an
Uh-huh.
unforeseeable, series of stuff that
Why
changes.
why speed up there and then sit through the entire red light when I can
Right.
just cruise right along and enjoy what's on the radio and not sit there waiting for as long. I drive like an old man. It didn't always used to be that way. When I first got my driver's license, if I wasn't going 50, I was going too slow, and it didn't matter where I was.
Yeah.
But as I drive like an old man now, and you're describing how your dad was.
Yeah.
You're describing me because I'm the same way. Linda gets in the car, I get in the car, and it's a couple minutes before I even fire it up.
Yeah.
And then I roll down my window and make sure my seatbelt's going. I adjust the radio, do whatever, set the AC or the heat, whichever I happen to need. Nope, that's defroster. I want it on my feet. Okay. And then I'll take my time backing out of the driveway and then off we go, you know. But I'm always aware there are people behind me. I get in the right lane and I stay in the right lane until I need to make a left turn. Then I'll, take my
Yeah.
time, plan ahead and get over. But I
Yeah.
drive like a little old man because I am a little old man. But what the heck, at least I'll admit it. So I
Well,
got nothing to prove. I don't see, I don't see getting all upset and upshook and all excited and then slamming that gas to get to the next red light ahead of the car behind me.
yeah.
I just don't get it. I don't get the logic. So I'll just cruise along, and if I hit it green, I hit it green. If I hit it red, no big deal. I figure if I want to get somewhere one light quicker, I'll just leave the house a little earlier, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, exactly. But then again, um, in other ways, my dad used to do that too, patiently. Like, so he'd purchase something, we'd bring it home, he'd set it down,
mhm,
he'd go to the bedroom, light up a cigarette, lay back on the pillow, turn on the
mhm.
radio news, and the box would be sitting there. And like I went with him, and like I want to open it up and just look what. And I said, Dad, are we gonna? And he'd be first. I have to read the manual, and the box would just be sitting there, and it was sort of torturous
Mhm.
because I wanted everything now,
Yeah.
and he had a whole system where he probably enjoyed that. He's sitting there looking at the box, thinking, okay, that'll be soon
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just hilarious and stuff.
Yeah. I did something similar today. We spent most of the day shopping. Had to go to the uh had to go to the grocery store, had to go, check on the go to the dentist and check on my appointment and go do this and that and the other. And then we went to good old Wally World and got a few things. Well, one of the things I've done this week, my next door neighbor is moving and he had a trailer, a little cargo trailer to get rid of. So I bought it from him.
Okay.
Well, it needs new safety chains, and I'm going to put a better tongue jack on it, and I'm going to rewire it and a few other things. So I wanted to get a few things. So I got a set of new safety chains for it, and I got a new tongue jack for it, and they're both sitting in the shed, locked up. And it's just you talking about your dad bringing home the box, and you're like, "Well, come on, Dad, are we going to do something with it?" And it's just like, "No, it's in the shed. It'll wait." Tomorrow
Yeah.
morning when it's cool, I'll go out and I'll mount the jack and then I'll put the new safety chains on it.
Yeah.
Then I get to go to the dump and unload it. So, because I've already got it loaded up with all the junk I want to haul away. So,
Yeah. He was big into the manuals,
yeah.
and
Well, I
I
do that too.
was. Yeah, and I've never been until I've run into the problem of, boy, I don't know where I'm at, and I have
Hmm.
to go and reference regardless the manual.
Yeah.
Um, so he would avoid that problem by simply starting off with the manual, whereas I would jump in, like automatic. So there is that. In fact, I'll just say I've said it before, but just for the heck of it, like one time I was working in the Everglades, and there was a special in the paper where by that day in the afternoon before the store closed, you could buy yourself this keyboard. I think it was like 64 keys
Hmm.
at the guitar shop.
Yeah.
Plus, they'll give you some extra doohickey software, whatever.
Uh-huh.
It was like such a great, and it was a way to get people into the store,
Sure.
obviously. But I was working, and so
Uh-huh.
I had X amount of time to get to, and plus traffic and so on. So once work ended, I jumped into my car and everything, contrary to what my dad, and I booked it down the freaking highway. I'm working it. I'm going, cutting through traffic, turning over here, and I was trying to, because Miami, like every city in the United States, just about is a grid,
Hmm.
and it's sort of like blocks of
Yeah.
different shapes. So if you find you have an obstacle going forward, you cut and you keep
Yeah.
cutting in a zigzag fashion,
Mhm.
um, arrowing in the direction of the store.
Yeah.
And if you make a bad mistake because there's a
Yep.
dead end, or you have to then screw. But you're doing it to get to. I was doing it to get to where I needed to go before, and I'm finally roughly within the area, maybe a few miles away, and I'm hauling butt down this residential,
Mhm.
hauling, burning it up down. And as I'm going, I didn't see the stop sign in front. I passed. It's a residential, so but there was a stop sign. You're not supposed to do that. And on the one corner was 5 patrol cars sitting outside. It was like a group of. It was like a gang of patrol. And I went, "Meow," and I saw it from the side of my eye, and I got this flush, this cold flush.
You just pull over, wait for him to catch up.
I, and right away, "Meow," and the guy comes up, the police, and he says, "Do you?" He stopped and he says, "Did you not?" I mean, I've never seen that before. He's saying, and I turned around. I turned my head up and I said, "Officer, I have nothing. Yes, I have nothing to say." Like I ought to, because
No excuses. Yeah.
it was so obvious that you
Mm.
can't. And then he asked, "Well, what's going on?" And I said, "You know what? To be honest with you, you have every right to. I can't say anything. I'm trying to arrive at a store to purchase a keyboard and so on and so forth, and I was cutting through to get there before the thing."
Before it
And
closes.
he looked at me. I was honest with him,
Mhm.
and he let me go without just a verbal warning.
Uh-huh.
He says, "Just take it easy. I mean, this is not. And I'm like, "Thank you, officer. Thank you." And I left with puckered, driving down the road. Puckered, dude.
10 and 2, the radio's turned way down and you're looking at everything.
Dude, it was so. But yeah, yeah. That's not the right way to do it. I did that, and
Nope.
it was wrong.
Oh, I
Um,
did that a few times myself. Um,
yeah,
I got let go a couple of times. It's yeah. Usually for doing stupid stuff, but because you got to think. I mean, they generally speaking don't pull over people who are just innocently driving from point A to point B. Either you did something or there's something wrong with at the back end of your car. You got a brake light out or something like that.
yeah,
And it could be innocent. No, I did not see that stop sign. I surely
yeah,
didn't. You're telling me there's a stop sign there. I'm going to have to take your word for it, but I sure did not see it.
yeah.
But or yeah, I saw the stop sign, but I did not see you, I guarantee. you know, even going that far.
So, anyways,
Yeah.
so
Well,
what you had
yeah, I do. Have you heard of the author by the name of Douglas Adams?
Douglas Adams? No.
Okay. How about his most famous series of books, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Okay, yes.
You have heard of that. Okay.
Mhm.
I wrote 5 books, a 5 book trilogy. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the restaurant at
End of the
the
universe.
end of the universe, life, the universe, and everything. So long and thanks for all the fish, and mostly harmless. Well, I found I don't know if he wrote this as in an article or if this was in a speech he gave or what have you. But it's more than just a quote. It's kind of sort of a paragraph, and I wanted to get your take on it. He says, I've come up with a set of rules that describes our reactions to technology and see if you agree with it. Anything that is in the world when you're born is normal, ordinary, and just a part of the way the world works. Anything that's invented between when you turn 15 and when you turn 35 is new, exciting, and revolutionary, and you can probably get a career in it. Anything invented after you're 35 is completely against the natural order of things. What do you think?
Yeah, I could see the psychology of that. I could see the I think that that bias, that trifecta bias, is I can observe it in certain things with me. So yes,
Oh
I
yeah,
yeah,
same here.
yeah,
Just music, music.
absolutely,
Everything that was already there when you were born, that's just the way the world works.
yeah,
That's just the music that is. Anything that comes out between the ages of 15 and 35 is cool and great. And anything after the age of 35, it sucks. And it goes
yeah.
completely against nature.
Music is one of them. Is probably the one that I associate closely. Like that's the first
Mhm.
one that I thought of.
Yeah, same here. And but I can see technology as well. I I got into computers. I was in my 20s when I got my first computers, and I'm talking about I go back to Commodore 64s and then up on into the Apple range, and then got my first PC in 97. So I was what 30, 35, 36, something like that. Yeah, something like that. So I, anything that's come along after that, I'm not real big on the iPad thing. I'm not real big. I've got a tablet. I don't use it. You know, um, I used it when I was selling real estate, but now just me on my own, I don't even use it. I'm still a desktop computer guy. I don't do anything on my cell phone but play solitaire. It just, to me, it's just foreign. This is natural. To me, this is right. And I can remember when this desktop PC was new and cool and exciting,
Yeah,
and the internet was new and cool and exciting.
yeah,
And I can see in my grandkids, because they've never known a time without the internet. I can see in my grandkids, well, that's just the way the world is. The
yeah.
internet's nothing new or mystical.
But yet, for us, for
Yeah.
me, just like you, dude. And I came to it late. My dad had a computer since the 64, Commodore 64, and he used it. He used it to write a book. He used it for his documentation of things. In fact, I'm doing the same stuff, just with my particular thing,
Hmm.
as far as documenting that he was. So I'm a copy of my in that respect.
Hmm.
But he was doing it for. I didn't arrive at it until the early 2000s. I
Hmm.
found no use for no utility for the computer until then.
I played games, and I mean like solitaire games and things like that, miniature golf and what have you. I never got into the shoot 'em up games or what have you. I had one and I played it a couple times. This is all right, fine.
Yeah,
But I played games on the Commodore, and I had an Apple IIe. I played games on it, but I didn't really get into doing any kind of the stuff we would normally consider computer things until I got a PC and got going on it. And I mean, so I go back to about the early into mid 80s, something like that, with a computer. But I didn't get my first PC. Windows 95 was out, so it was 1997 I was introduced to the PC. Before that, I had the old school stuff, and it all worked just fine. So they were still doing the brand wars back then. You had Apple and PC,
hmm,
but then you also had Amiga, and I was an aficionado of the Amiga. I liked the Amiga is a graphics machine.
yeah,
The PC is for business, and Apple, well, they're wannabes.
yeah,
Because this is long before the Mac, long before the Mac came out. So it was just kind of a weird thing. But yeah, I was late to the PC movement, and then once I got online, that was it. All hell broke loose, and here I am today.
yeah. Well, this
So,
is a big deal in terms of I mean, it's just in our lifetime,
Yeah.
this particular tool that we're using right now is the most revolutionary thing. There's many revolutionary things, but this
Mhm.
is unparalleled in
And,
just so many ways.
and it's funny for us to think of it this way, but I mean, I talked to my grandson, and he's like, I'm like, well, if you're using the PC, and he's like, man, you are old school. And I'm thinking to myself, how far have we gone to where having a desktop computer is considered old school? And then have to stop and think about it. Most people don't have a desktop computer anymore. They use their phones, they use a tablet, they use an iPad, they use whatever. They don't bother with a
Let me
desktop
just
computer.
let me inject this issue though.
Hmm.
Even before I started wearing glasses,
Hmm.
and I needed glasses then too, for a long while. I
Yeah.
used to strain my eyes and stuff, and I could still back then I could still do it,
Uh,
but I knew I was straining my eyes. But I had glasses that I just tucked away. I was like, nah, I don't need those. I don't need those. Until one day I was like, I can't see anything. I just, what am I trying to do here?
Hello, that's me.
Yeah, I was like, this is impossible.
I did
And
the
so
same thing.
I figured that why not? Well, a phone is way too small
Yeah,
in
same here.
any event, and it's not practical for me because you want to be able to look at things. It just that only lasts a little phone only lasts so long until your eyesight starts to go.
Wait till you need one of these.
Oh yeah,
Wait till you need a magnifying glass. I mean, I, I still to this day. You were talking about reading manuals and stuff like that. I got an entire manual here for a GoPro, and it's like, how the heck do they print that small? They can't. How is that physically possible? It's like, oh, okay, fine, there we go. You
I'm
know,
gonna have to purchase one of those because actually, um, I need that too, just
yeah.
now, for reading documents and stuff, like now already. Um,
You know, the clamp on, it's got a scissor arm, kind of like the microphone mounts and the camera mounts, and you
yeah,
clamp it to the table, and it's a big round fluorescent light
I
with a
have
big
one.
magnifying lens. I got one that's clamped to a countertop in the bathroom because I get splinters in my hands, and I cannot hold a needle and a magnifier and a flashlight at the same time. So it's like, okay, let me go flip over the lid and turn on the light. And there you are, you little son of a gun. And dig it out that way.
Oh, let me ask you this. This about those. So I bought one at Harbor Freight. This is gonna
That's what I
sound
got.
okay. Well, I don't know how much they cost now, but I had mine for years and years, and maybe about early this year, I'm sitting here and I smell a burning.
Uh huh.
And I'm like, well, what the hell? I smell a burning, and I look up at the lamp, and it went.
Uh huh.
And I thought, because it had gone, the light had gone before, but never with burning.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, does that mean that the lamp is dead, or does that mean that the bulb is
The
dead and it
the
just happened to
ballast is
smoke?
probably dead.
The ballast,
Probably.
because
Probably. And
it
forget about getting parts for them. Forget about it. And in fact, they tried to talk me out of buying that at the counter at Harbor Freight. They said, it's hard to get a tube for these, and you can't get parts for them. If the ballast goes, it goes. And I said, well, then I'll either convert it to LED or buy a new one. They're not expensive.
you could get the I've changed the light on it, the bulb on it, going to Harbor Freight.
Uh huh.
They have the little round ones, so they do have them. But
Still now?
yeah, I changed it. I changed it once in its lifetime.
Okay. But, that they were telling me it's getting harder and harder to get parts for them. And, forget about getting a ballast for it. And it's getting harder to get the tubes. And I'm like, well, I'll either change it to LED or I'll just buy another one. I mean, they're not expensive. It's not like the old days where it was half a week's pay and you could get every single if you needed a new switch, you could go and order a new switch for it. It's not like that anymore. I
Yeah, you
get it,
get the
I
whole
know,
thing.
but it's not a deal breaker to me. So
I'm gonna have to purchase a new one because that did come in handy for many years.
yeah,
Um,
well, I kind of made a mistake in buying it because I got onto Amazon and looked a little bit closer, and I did find several LED alternatives
oh
for
yeah,
about the same price. But you just have to kind of dig for them because
I'm gonna dig.
most of them are fluorescent, but they do have LED ones out now. So,
Yeah, it's an important
mm.
addition, especially. Well,
Well,
imagine people back in the day, dude. They didn't have any of these uh, helpful assistant technologies to get
well,
us, through the day.
that's one of those little oddities of history. Um, that, for instance, the Chinese never developed glass. They developed to a certain point. They invented stoneware and crockery that we still call China today. And they never saw the need to go any further than that. They had teacups, they had bowls, they had vessels to carry water in. That's enough. But as a result, they never carried it forward. They never developed a glass industry. Europeans did develop glass. And one of the side effects they kind of discovered was it would magnify when you looked through it. And spectacles came out, which basically extended the workable lifetime of scholars and philosophers, because when your eyesight started going
You
when you were in
can't
your
do
30s.
more.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why some print in some of these books is so dang dong big, and that's because the person writing it couldn't see.
That's an interesting point.
And so the development of spectacles basically just extended humanity and humanity's ability to learn, and as well as ability to teach. It wasn't until, I want to say, the 16, maybe 1700s that they started going to Asia, that spectacles started appearing in Asia. And it was
Yeah,
like, holy cow, what have we been missing all of our lives?
yeah.
You know,
So that's an interesting.
just a little side trip in history that I thought was kind of weird, but I never
Um,
thought about it. They progressed to a certain point and said, okay, that's good enough.
you mentioned this is a side point too from your side point, but you mentioned, why do you think some of their writing in their books or parchments or whatever were so damn big?
Yeah.
And that's a great point. It jumped me into remembering this. So we know Rowan Atkinson, right?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Bean.
Mr. Bean.
He
Yeah.
I don't know that you're going to ever see this anytime soon because you're a cultural infidel, although I could be pleasantly surprised. So I'll just tell you this much. He came out with a new series. It happens to be on Netflix, but
I haven't seen it yet.
the insanity
Yeah.
of his comedy, everything you've seen up till now, he triples and quadruples up on it, dude. So the series is called Man versus Bee.
Uh-huh.
And the whole premise of it, Mark, is that Mr. Bean works for a company that does home sitting
Hmm.
for powerful and famous and rich people, and so he happens to get this gig. And he walks up to the home, and it's an incredible thing, and it's high tech all the way. Like, it's voice command, hand signals, so you can already imagine the problems he's going to start getting into. And the couple is this very extravagant art collectors. So they
Hmm.
bring him in and they say, and this painting here is so and so, and they're giving him the tour, and they give him a manual
Uh-huh.
for all the technological features so that he doesn't. And there's a dog. You can't feed the dog certain foods because he will start to crap all over the place. Well, you can start imagining all of it. Let's put it to, I'm not gonna, I'll just skip to the, at the end of this show, dude, the couple opens a door, and I'm not gonna tell you, and and Rowan Atkinson has a blowtorch, and he's torching the house, and the paintings are falling and everything. Because one thing throughout the series leads to another, that he has to burn down the house. He doesn't have to, but it's Rowan Atkinson,
Yeah.
and it's so insane. It's insane, Mark, and it all had to do with a bee sliding in through a window that he couldn't get rid of, and he's chasing it and trying to kill. It's insanity, dude. Insanity.
I need to check it out then.
Oh
I like
my
Rowan
goodness,
Atkinson.
you do.
Rowan Atkinson is a comedic genius. I mean,
He is.
and for those of you who don't know who Rowan Atkinson is, I mean, well, first of all, shame on you. But Mr. Bean, of course, and he was Blackadder,
Yeah,
and so many things. I've got a tape I recorded off of HBO. He did a special years ago. It's various different little segments, and I sent one of those segments to you. It's a video you can find here on YouTube where he's playing an imaginary drum kit,
I
and
think
that is just uh, it's genius. It's 100% sight gags. It's just him sitting on a stool with two imaginary drumsticks, playing an imaginary drum kit, and it's it's hysterical. It's
he is
funny
one
stuff.
of the most iconic physical and geniuses
Oh,
that I could absolutely say
mhm.
with confidence that it's just unparalleled. His talent is unparalleled.
It's not on the same scale. He didn't go quite as frantic as burning the house down. But there was another comedian back in the 60s and early 70s. He died in the mid 70s. Peter Sellers,
Yes,
Inspector Clouseau. Well,
he gets a lot of that from him.
he did one movie called The Party, where Peter Sellers is this extra who accidentally gets invited to this Hollywood party. And he spends a good portion of his time at this party just walking around and checking out this house. And it's various little scenes, and he's the fastest moving man you've ever seen in your life. He sees this big control panel against one wall, and there's all kinds of buttons and switches on it. And he's just standing there, and he flips one switch, and they cut away to the big party room where all these people are, and this big curved bar with bartenders behind it and people sitting at it, and there's nuts and glasses and drinks and food and everything else on this bar. He flips this switch and the bar just disappears into the wall. It just starts moving and raking everything off onto the floor along its way. And the bartender's standing there watching it, and the people are jumping back, and the owner of the house looks up to the control panel and there's nobody there. And he's like, "What?" And he turns around and looks outside by the swimming pool, and Peter Sellers is standing there, and he waves at him. He's, "Hi, how you doing?" You know, he got all the way around without anybody noticing him.
Yeah,
You know,
he was a genius as well, and
oh my god,
a lot of it you can see that he could have been an inspiration for sure,
hmm,
to Rowan Atkinson.
definitely,
So
definitely.
yeah, so it does, and there's lots of those physical comedians
Hmm.
in the past, but I'm telling you that Mr. Bean, Rowan Atkinson, he's just, it's just, he's on another level as far
Yes,
as his talent and stuff.
I'll agree with you there. I'm gonna have to look for that Man versus Bee.
Yeah,
Okay.
you read the title and you're like, but dude, the insanity is and there's doors, so you can't get into one part of the house without getting the actual code and stuff. And so he burns the book, the code book, by mistake. He leaves it on the stove, and he gets a phone call, and it just burns, and it's like a big hole where the ring of the stove is at. So he has none of the information, and it snowballs worse and worse, dude. I mean, it's hilarious. It's freaking hilarious.
I like Rowan Atkinson a lot. Oh man. I totally, absolutely, completely, 100% forgot to post the link to this studio if anybody wanted to join us today. Anybody out there in the chat, you want to join us? I'll post the link. If not, I won't bother. Now that we're an hour and a half in, or
Yeah.
an hour in, rather. So, let's see. And I've also forgot to check out what people are saying out here. I got caught up in the conversation. Steve says, "Damn Luddites." That must have been when we were talking about the early computers and getting into PCs late. Well, that's quite possible, you know. But then again, when I got into PCs, there was still Amiga and there was still the old Apple pre-app Macintosh. So it was kind of the beta versus VHS fight. Now, see, I've dated myself on that too. Do you remember beta versus VHS?
To be honest with you, I experienced VHS, not beta.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it
I
was
mean, that's
still.
not true. That's not true.
Mhm,
In our house, we didn't have beta,
mhm.
but in family members' houses, they did.
Yeah, I knew two friends who had beta, but just about everybody I knew had VHS,
Yeah, it was.
except for like one or two. Oh, well, beta's picture quality is so much better. Yeah, if you don't mind 30-minute tapes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, see, and then Linda said, remember mom and her Amiga. Your mom had an Atari. She had an Atari 800 computer that she used forever. It did what she wanted it to do. She didn't want anything new. She didn't want
Oh,
a PC.
oh, I gotta share. Well, go ahead with the P. I gotta share. It's. I don't even know, but
Go ahead.
it's okay. So I ran into um interview show
Hmm.
on YouTube, and within the last month or two, they interviewed Mark Zuckerberg,
Oh, okay.
and it was, well, there were fascinating parts of it, but you know, it is what it is. It was a long interview, but in one of the parts, the interviewer said, "You're one of the most disliked people in the tech world by so many people," and he laid out all the problems that we've talked about in the past and stuff.
Uh huh.
Um, and he gave some interesting answers
So,
that I think that are and I'll share it with you. But before I do that, as a side note to the side note, without naming names, there's a friend of ours in general, um, to make it as distant as possible, that has been quarantined from public posting
okay.
on that platform on Facebook due
Hmm.
to his rambunctious, in their perspective. So he's got a bunch of strikes and a bunch of
Yeah.
situations, and so he's not able to communicate publicly for X amount of days, and there's like a series of
Hmm.
restrictions and stuff. But there he can communicate through a messenger,
Hmm.
but limited and so on and so on. So there's all that. For him putting his thoughts across, I don't know the extreme or not extreme, but what from what I gathered, it was relatively benign, you know.
Hmm.
But then again, so Mark Zuckerberg is questioned with these things and stuff, and he says, I'm paraphrasing big time, and he said a very interesting thing. He says, we have millions and millions and millions and millions of people using our platform. You wouldn't start, and I'm not defending, I'm just saying what my observation, what he said, paraphrase, and my observations, not making a judgment call
Yeah.
necessarily, is we have millions and millions of people. You you don't start a company, a social media company like the one that we have, if you're not interested in people having conversations and sharing their thoughts and ideas, he said.
Okay.
And he said early on, we didn't have the technology that we have today with AI and such
Hmm.
in order to track, you know, bad actors. I'm loosely paraphrasing. Because what happens is, what do you do? He says, what would you do if you have millions and millions of people and a segment of those independently, some grouping and others not, um, trying to commit fraud, trying to deceive, trying to using the platform for all these subversive things. Um, and you have people being bullied. There's people committing actual tech crimes and stuff, with under the umbrella of this company. And you have to juggle all this. Then you have political things where he explains, where you have all these groups that flag um, certain content, and then you have this other group that flags the other certain content, and you have all these things. And so if you make a move by saying more control here, the other people say, well, you're adding too much control, you're being abusive. If you add too little control, the other people are saying, why aren't you controlling that? And so he laid out a very, to me, convincing, to a degree, um, argument for that it's not an easy thing. From our perspective, it's just one comment.
Right.
But from their perspective, it's an ocean of comments, and some of them can lead to situations and so on and so forth. The interviewer pushed back because Mark Zuckerberg told him, well, what would you do? And the interviewer said a few things, and then he came back at him saying the same thing. He said, I would I would ask the people that you serve, your customers, the same thing you just asked me. What would you do? Because people don't know how complicated running something like that is. They only know from their end user experience.
Right.
So put the question on the people transparently. We have 500,000 people trying to commit this, or it's 60,000 doing this, 60,000 doing that, in this ocean of things. We have AI to moderate things. Some people fall in the wayside that shouldn't. Other people do, and then you have people telling on each other like this is inappropriate. You have an ocean of situations, and then he came back to, but we didn't start this company because we didn't want people to talk.
Okay, I will not discount a single word he says. And he's asking, what would you do?
Mm-hmm.
Very simple. Put in an appeal process with a person looking at it and take no action. Okay, hide the post, freeze it, but put assign a person to physically review that and see, is it a violation of this policy, that policy? Because I fell through that too. I posted an animated, just a little animation of Orson Welles clapping his hands.
I remember you had said.
That got me 30 days. They never would say why. That's the problem. Well, it's against community standards. How? How is one person doing that against your community standards? Explain that to me. And let me appeal that and have a person respond, not your AI.
Hmm.
And if you don't think there's enough people to do that, if you don't have enough people, hire some.
They don't have enough.
That's an excuse.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, to be fair, the way he laid it out is, again, I don't know. I'll say the way he laid it out is the way I usually approach that. And I think that well, where I say, well, wait a second, Mark, in a certain conversation about whatever. And that's why it spoke to me, the reason of it, his reasoning, where I'll tell you, like, in certain, well, but dude, and it's not like you don't do it too. I'm just saying that, like, when I say to you, yeah, dude, but from the perspective of so and so, and you say it too, from our perspective and so on.
Right.
And he perfectly used that argument, and it spoke to me because it makes freaking sense in terms of you have so many people, and you can't hire. Well, I don't know that you can or not, but it was an interesting. It was convincing enough for me to be more even-handed on their part, slightly.
The only reply I have to all of that is YouTube does it that way. Their AI picks something up, you appeal it. A person looks at it and says, okay, this was a mistake, or no, it stands. YouTube does it. Facebook can too. That's all I'm getting at.
There's also another part with what you're saying, which is, all that being said, of what I said before and what you just, on the heels of what you just said now, what if, apart from all that junk that we just mentioned, complications where there's so many people and this and that, what if their own staff is selectively, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes, and that may be, but at least by having a person review it, right? You have eyes on it, and you're not relying on the AI. And AI, I mean, a lot of things is blamed on YouTube's algorithm. A lot of things that YouTube is blamed on the algorithm. Well, there's more than one algorithm. Algorithms handle a lot of things, but people were getting flagged for a lot of stuff about 2-3 years ago
on YouTube.
And you would appeal it, and a person would review it,
and you'd get passed.
And it would get passed. Well, that they did more than just that. They put that information in, and it was all incorporated into the AI. That's how it learns. That's how it learns the difference between words. That's how it learns the nuance. That's how it learns. And now people aren't getting flagged like they were, because the algorithm learned from that feedback that the people at YouTube were changing. They were teaching these algorithms and teaching this AI that, no, you don't flag it for that, even though it said this.
Yeah.
Facebook can do the exact same thing. You know, if I could dispute the violation of community standards for Orson Welles clapping his hands, and a person looked at it and said, well, this was not a violation, that would teach the AI to stop looking for that. But as it sat, that one particular animation got me 6 different flags for violating community standards, and each one carried a 30-day suspension. And that's why I just nuked that entire profile and started a new one.
So once you nuked it, you were able to start immediately?
I just started I started a new profile and took everything down off of the old profile and just nuked it. Just deleted that profile. And it's funny, one of my friends, I sent him a friend request on the new profile. He reported it as a copycat. They came back and told him, no, it's completely different. It's not a copycat. It was an exact copycat. It was an exact duplicate of my old, like same logo, same name, same everything, same pictures, same information, same everything. I said, no, it's not a copycat. Yeah. You know.
So yeah. Well, you know, crazy. So here's oh, go ahead.
If you nuke it, it will glow. And it did. It glowed.
And Jim said a few things as well.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Hiring people costs money, you know. We wouldn't want him to go without now, would we? Well, that's true. I mean, you know, we wouldn't want him to go out without his 14th house.
You know, it's, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that his worth, his net worth, his financial, is like in the billions, like 60 billion.
Well, see, that's the thing. It wouldn't cut into his net worth at all, simply because all he does is raise his advertising rates to cover it.
No, he okay, so
it's operating overhead. I mean,
no, he has more wealth, and I'm not judging either way. I mean, it's an exorbitant amount, but like
he's entitled to every penny that he earns too. Yeah.
Well, no, but here's my point that I was like, it just like a thing. He has more financial oomph than many actual countries, the smaller countries around the world. There's some countries that, although they have they're a country, but he's got more, at least, than cities and towns throughout the world. Like
Sure. He's
it's
one of the
just,
mega rich. Yeah.
yeah, it's just
So
an insane, inconceivable. It's inconceivable to properly process that.
nerds win again. I mean, take every professional athlete that you can think of and you add their income together. You might have 50% of what Bill Gates has.
Yeah,
You know, nerds win again. Let's see here. Harneal Media says, I would take the argument more seriously if this was a site that was paid for. Well, there's some truth to that too. But
I
I
don't
mean,
understand.
well, um, it's, I don't know that they operate in the black, basically.
In
I
the black.
really don't know. Yeah, meaning that they get enough advertising revenue to support the business. I mean, it's got to be running in the black, otherwise they'd
I
gone
see.
bankrupt.
Okay, so is Steve trying to say? Wait a second. They are profit. Is Steve saying, but they're not profit? I don't. I'm missing
Well,
something.
they are profitable, but what I'm getting at is you're not paying to use the site. I'm
Ah,
not paying to use the site.
right, right, right.
They kind of operate off of revenue from
Advertising.
advertisers,
Yeah,
and I don't know. I mean, it's one thing for a person to make X amount of money off of the company, but if the company in and of itself isn't operating at a profit, you know,
yeah,
so
yeah. That okay.
Zuckerberg.
That is a perfectly reasonable argument. So I mean, the trade off is that we're using it, but we
Mhm.
become an part of their money making model as potential
Mhm.
customers for their
Right.
advertisers.
And that's why they're messing with the display now. There are several different versions of Facebook for computer and for, mobile devices and everything else. There are several different versions of Facebook, and they've got them all out there. They're trying different experimental brands. Number one, to avoid ad blockers. They want you to see all the advertising that people are paying for. And a lot of people use ad blockers on Facebook. Well, they have figured out a way to block the ad blocker so that you don't see the content.
Right.
You don't see anything. You can go into a group and nothing, but you turn off the ad blocker and suddenly there's everything. So they want you to see that advertisement. So, and they
Just
keep developing them so fast and so quickly that the ad blocker people can't keep ahead or keep up with them. Because if there's 20 different versions of Facebook out there, they got to have 20 different versions of their ad block software. So a lot of them have just given up and they say this doesn't support Facebook.
you remember back in the day,
Hmm.
we would sit to watch a show,
Uh-huh.
a typical evening at home back in the day, and you'd start off watching it, and then the commercial came on, and everybody get up, walk around, this and
Mhm.
that, go to the bathroom, somebody outside, this and that. We're waiting for all the commercials to go, and then the commercial. But it didn't always turn out that you'd walk away.
Mhm.
Sometimes your lazy butt would just sit on the couch and let
Uh-huh.
the commercials run while you yapped at everything you disliked about each commercial. And
Yeah.
then when the show came back on, you got to start your thing again and enjoy your and so we had to deal with it in that fashion. But today's world, we have the ad blocker thing. I've never used it personally, um, because I'm too lazy to get off that couch. So I just let it. Um, I've never used it, but I will tell you this: if I see a commercial and it's a video that I don't necessarily enjoy
Uh-huh.
enough to wait, that video's done. I move on
Yeah.
because you know, yeah,
Yeah. And it depends on how many ad breaks they put into the video too.
that's
Now,
true. Yeah,
I get your comparison to TV advertising, and
Yeah.
I agree with it because you're absolutely right. We tolerated that. But here's the difference for me anyway.
Okay.
You take advertising on television, and you knew when your TV show took a break, and you knew that you faded to black, and you knew that this was a commercial. It didn't attempt to portray itself as part of the TV show. You knew the TV show was on pause and you're watching a commercial for Cocoa Krispies, and now this is for Kenner Toys, and now this is for G.I. Joe. And then that last one, the commercial's over with, and now we're back to the show.
That's a good point.
Facebook is not doing that.
They're sneaking it in.
You're scrolling down and you see your friend just posted a picture of his puppy out romping around in the backyard, and then the next one there's a kindly face and you're thinking, whose mom is this? And then you kind of look up a little bit and you see, oh, this is from Geritol sponsored. It's making the ads look like a post
Mm-hmm.
that's going to come up in your timeline. To
Yeah.
me, that's manipulation. That would be like taking the characters of your show and having them suddenly start talking about Cocoa Krispies.
Two things.
You
Two
know,
things. Not in opposition, but just to put it out there. It might be in opposition to one degree. Um, on your feed, as you're scrolling, like what you said about the
mm-hmm,
uh whatever product, and all of a sudden there's a lady there, and then you realize that it's a gig, they're trying
mm-hmm,
to push on. If you think of it as a newspaper, the feed,
mm-hmm.
you could get away with connecting the concept where a newspaper has a bunch of stuff. You may have obituaries, and then you'll have a product for like champagne
Right.
a la France, and so you have all these things on your feed. And let me say the second one. And the second one, I forgot. Damn. Okay, go ahead. The second one was an
But see,
important one, but whatever.
but even in a newspaper, you have a column of text where you're reading the obituaries, and then there's a black line. And then there's the ad with a border around it because the advertiser wants that ad to stand out. He doesn't just want a block of text that blends into the story. That's what Facebook is doing. Now, Instagram, the ads have a little bit of a different look to them. You can tell that you're looking at an ad. Facebook, the ad is indistinguishable from a post. So I could be reading, I'll be cruising down my timeline, and Eloy has posted about this building in Spain, and it was from this, that, and the other. Okay, cool. And then all of a sudden, it's you get down to the end of it, and hit the like and everything, and you just scroll down here and you say, I'm reading an advertisement. It doesn't look any different from a regular post.
My favorite part about what you just said is that
Mhm.
you know my my feed.
Well, that did two things.
My feed. My feed. Like you basically you described my feed for the past few years.
Well, but that what that did was two things. That acknowledged that yes, I do follow you, and two, that I do read them.
Oh, no,
So,
it's
you know,
funny because you described
now,
it. So
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
so
Well,
so 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 I so yes, they're pushing it, and and
well,
and they're mixing it in the thing. Well, go ahead.
well, what I'm getting at here is Steve says, "Are you willing to pay for the service so they don't need ads to pay for it?" I'm not against advertising. I'm really not. I have ads on my website, but you can tell they're ads. They're not a part of the main article. You can tell that it's an ad. It's different. It's not, I'm not trying to blend the ad and manipulate it so that it looks like it's part of the
I got my second
article.
one that
Go
I had
ahead.
forgotten, which was exactly that you're just saying. It is also the case in the past
Mhm.
where not only was the commercials and you knew that you were by the way, that idea
Mhm.
is a perfect contrast to what we're experiencing online. We
Mhm.
knew we were in what do you call it, intermission,
Mm-hmm.
like in a movie theater. So we knew that, okay, the official stuff we're enjoying now, this is
It's a
buy our
break.
stuff part. So
Yeah.
it divided the situation. So I get that. But not that I'm since then I've realized even in the shows they would inject, not all of them, but in certain shows they would inject certain products and such
Yes.
in order to push them, that was doing sort of the same sneaky thing
Right.
differently, but so they even
And
implemented that back
and
then.
and I have no issue with that. Believe me, when you're watching a TV show, every Coke can or Pepsi bottle is there because Coke or Pepsi paid for it to be there. I
Yeah.
know that, and I'm not. That's not a problem. What all I'm saying is identify the ads. If Facebook put, say, a real faint, real pale pink border around the ads, I wouldn't have a thing to say because I can tell the difference between an ad and something a friend posted at a glance. I know they need advertising. I get it. The internet, okay, I'll go out on a limb and say all entertainment is advertising based. Every form of entertainment you see
Yeah, because
is
it
there
needs
to
to,
spread advertising.
yeah, it needs to pay for itself. Yeah.
Exactly. So I get that and I know that. And that's acceptable. And it's like you're talking about in the movie theater. Let's all go to the lobby,
Yeah.
get ourselves a treat. We knew that. We understood that
Yeah.
because it wasn't a manipulation to try to get you to think that that was a part of the movie that you were there to watch. You knew it wasn't a part of the movie.
No, I didn't know. As a
Then
kid, I didn't
well,
think
yeah, as a
anything.
kid, yeah, I liked the popcorn bouncing around. A burgers can't be beat. Ta-dum, ta-dum. We got no freshest meat. You know,
It's true.
let's see here. Misfeed ads are the same thing as infomercial. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you're absolutely right. But at least with an infomercial, you know it's an infomercial. Nobody is that perky
So
about a
so
mop. You know.
so there's another layer to this. This is speculative.
Mhm.
This is now leaving the farm,
Yeah.
okay? So
Uh-huh.
I'm just gonna throw this at you and see what you think. And you guys out there, you
Okay.
tell me.
And I want to get back to a few comments that I missed, but yes, come on. I'm
Okay,
ready.
so I'll just add this.
Mhm.
Is it unreasonable to you,
Mhm.
and you guys out there, just everybody, to think that there is a possibility,
Mhm.
apart from all these things you guys have been saying, as far as the way
Uh-huh.
they put ads in front of you, is there also more nefarious, subconscious? For instance, I'm going to go out on a limb myself.
Okay.
I don't know this, but I have thought it. You and I are talking right now. They are watching
Mhm.
out there in the comments. You and I are watching through our window and we're watching the comments.
Mhm.
Could there be technology? Because we know movies did it in the past, where as we're doing our video, there's some slightly blurred, unnoticeable to the conscious mind, where they could put in a flash of Coca-Cola, like we've seen in the past. People use
Oh,
there's a
subliminal advertising?
yeah. Is there a possible, to end my question and see what you say, that all these years we've been surfing the web,
Mhm.
they've been using that technique in many places without us even know. In other words, they're working our brain behind the scenes without us even knowing. Is that a possibility?
Probably not. Is it a possibility? Yes, it is. But is it
Okay.
likely? Probably not. Mainly because it doesn't work. It
Okay.
it doesn't work. And then even the guy who invented it, who tried it, he was a movie theater owner, and he said that when he interspersed just one frame, single frame hamburger, popcorn, drinks, he said his box off his sales out of the concession stands went up. Years later, he admitted, nah, he made that up. Yes, he tried it, but there was no effect. He was trying to sell the technology. And then people figured out they could do it themselves. And many others put it to you this way: the experiment, they were not able to replicate the results that he claimed he got. And years later, he admitted, yeah, he faked the whole thing. He'd actually tried it, but it didn't do anything. So subliminal advertising, there's been no studies that prove that it works.
You can't. Okay,
So
so
now that's not to say that it isn't done, just that there is no evidence to support the fact that it actually works.
okay, I've never researched that. I've thought about it,
Hmm.
and I'm listening to what you're saying on it. This is a different conversation. We'll leave it there, but I just want to say that um you're saying that there's, in that fashion, there's no back door into the mind to place an idea
Well, I'm
that's effective.
I'm not saying that it doesn't work. What I'm saying is there's no evidence to support that it does.
Okay.
So they don't do stuff just willy nilly. Some people will experiment with something to see if it works, but once they get a result, they'll
Then
either run with it or they'll just drop it because it's not worth the money to keep investing in it, you know. And
okay.
at the end of the day, it is a business, and it doesn't make sense to keep spending money on something that isn't showing a result, a profitable result. So, and when you stop and think about it, what does a service like YouTube have to offer other than more videos and the ads that are placed on that video? You know, and that's transparent. I mean, you know, we know that there are ads. They say that there are ads, even infomercials. They come up, they have the little disclaimer at the beginning: the following is a paid program. The products presented are such and such, so and so. And then they get into the, hi, I'm Jimmy, and this is the greatest floor polish you've ever found. And let's go check it out. We dumped motor oil on this kitchen linoleum or whatever, you
Yeah.
know. But you know that it's an infomercial, and they have to put up that disclaimer. Following is a paid program.
Yeah.
But they don't have to do that on social media. Now, Facebook does in little letters underneath the name of the person, of the supposedly the name of the person, it says sponsored. But you have to look for that. And it's
Yeah.
really, really easy to miss. All I'm saying is identify the ad. I've got no problems with ads. I use them myself. Just identify that this is an ad and not a post from your Aunt Mary, you know.
All right. All right. So let's get to the questions that you were
Oh yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, Steve says unless you added Geritol as a friend, you can tell it's an ad. That's what I mean. If you are just scrolling down, you may or may not see that little word sponsored. All I'm saying is, you know, put a line around it. I don't have a philosophical problem with ads. I just want to know that it is an ad. That's all.
yeah.
Let's see here. Okay, way back up here. Um, Jim Dockrell says no one needs $1 billion. Well, who are we to decide what somebody else needs? At 999 million, you get a certificate that says you win at capitalism. If only that was true, and everything else gets taxed. Well, you know.
No, so I'll say, to be completely if I were completely on my
Mhm.
um open to so if I were to process in my mind the thought of what who needs $1 billion, right? If I were to go down that road, I personally, if I were to think who needs $1 billion, I would follow it with saying who needs $1 billion to live a decent life. I would say one could survive off of way less than that. I could literally say that. However, there's other factors involved,
Mhm.
um, and it becomes complicated, such as is that money, is that billion? In the case of Zuckerberg, I think it would be. Um, is that part of the investment of what he's doing, or is that just money in his pocket? I don't know. I could work in. I could go down that route and say, well, that money could be better used over here and this and that. But now I've become a planner for Mark Zuckerberg,
Yeah. And
and I'm not that.
then you start getting into the territory that I automatically go to, and that is it's none of my damn business.
Right. I mean,
He's entitled to every penny he earns, and if his net worth is what is it, $61.2 billion is his net worth. Good for him.
yeah.
Good for him.
No, but could
Mhm.
you, if you removed all things being equal, and you were to speak for somebody else, as if you're
That's the problem.
the that's the problem, as if you were the I guess the father figure, mother figure, the
Right.
authority figure, and the person was, um, you know, not. You could go in the direction of saying, "Listen, you do not need $1 billion because you can buy everything with $1 billion. There's people that don't. Like you could go down those roads, but the problem is that now what? You're becoming some sort of
Yes.
kind of like
Yes.
but
Who do I think I am by deciding what somebody else does or does not need? I am
but
not in a position of authority. I can have an opinion, but my opinion is worth every penny that you paid for it. It's not worth nothing.
so but now to be fair, or to go to where one doesn't necessarily lean naturally,
Mhm.
could you say from your just personal direct viewpoint and say people can live off of 200,000 perfectly fine, so there's no need for a guy having $1 billion. What kind of
Well,
silliness is that?
in
You could argue that.
you could argue it successfully, probably, but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. How many
Right,
foundations is he funding? How many charities is he giving to? How
right,
many people have jobs because he is earning that 61.2 billion dollars? How
yeah.
many industries are fueled by him doing what he's doing? It's none of my business how much he makes. It's none of my business how much you make. It's none of my business how much Jim Dockrell or David Jones or Steve Nealon makes. It's none of my business. Just the fact that he's Mark Zuckerberg, somebody put it out there that he's worth $61.2 billion. Good for him. Proof that nerds win again. You know, I mean, it's nobody's business. And let's remember, money is not a finite resource. So just because he has 61 billion doesn't mean somebody has less because he's got that. Money is not a finite resource. Get your eyes off of his and go get your own.
And I kind of agree with, that's where I sit, but to push
Mhm,
myself off the cliff of where I stand onto another
mhm.
cliff, just as an thought experiment, I could, by doing that, I could say that but a lot of things have to come along with that, but I could say with no doubt that currently speaking,
Mhm.
everybody and anybody on earth could live with much less than that successfully
Oh,
and so
sure
on.
they could. We
So
could all go
I
back
could
to
push myself to say that, except that what the ideological things that are required for one to take a stance and say you're earning too much or that's a grotesque amount of money is a judgment that comes with dangers, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I have no say in it, so it's no. But at the same time, yeah, I'm not gonna go further with it other than I'm glad that I don't get to say how much other people make or not make, because I'm no one to judge. But I could make the judgment and say that people could live off of way less. I could make that
Oh,
judgment, but
sure. We
that's as
could we
far.
could go back to living in caves and wearing deer skins and what have you. They
Yeah,
did it for millions of years. But
yeah. It's
there's a reason why we don't do that now, and that's because we don't have to. because we figured out that living in a cave and not being able to go outside when it's raining sucks.
How many? How many? How
I mean,
many?
turn off your air conditioner. It ain't going to happen, is it? So, I mean, um, Jim, you and I are going to disagree heavily on this. Trickle down economics works every time it's tried and tried faithfully. Reagan tried. He had a Democrat Congress that blocked him. He cut spending, or excuse me, he cut taxes. He's been dead for I don't remember how many years. He's still waiting on the spending cuts that Congress promised him and never gave him. Trickle down economics works every time it's tried faithfully.
I have another take on trickle down economics. If you could put his comment.
Okay, yeah, we can put it back up. Sure.
Okay, so my take is a version of what you're mentioning, but it's a different take. So I think or it's a different avenue. I would say that trickle down economics, as long as there's no fraud concerning a monopoly or some sort of um, government and private business accord if it's a capitalistic endeavor, and even then that trickle down economics works every single time without failure, barring those things that I said. Every single time in this respect, anytime somebody hits it big because their company is doing a good job at producing a product that people come to purchase, that company needs to acquire more employees at times in order to fulfill the product going out the door, whatever that product might be. So they are now producing more, having to pay more people. Money from that enterprise is showering down. Now, be careful, because the word is trickle down. The word is not floodgates down. The waterfall and the mist of money coming down does travel down because the top needs people to work.
Right.
And those people need to get paid.
Right.
And people need to purchase. And so it's a chain. So
businesses have to expand to be able to keep up with demand.
So if you look at it in that regard, which is kind of like it works across the board, because it's our system. It's beyond, it's even beyond any sort of like modern political, although it's part of the modern political debate. Before this debate existed, people naturally opened up a bakery, and if they could, they'd open up two of them, and they'd hire more employees, and there's more food on the table of the families of the employees, and schools, and it's just, to me, it's a no-brainer in that respect. So I would make that type of argument in respect to something regarding trickle down economics. What do you think of that? Do you think that that's fair, or do you think that that's insanely wrong?
You have to remember that there's two components to trickle down economics, and it's also called supply side economics. There are two main aspects of it, and it was first proposed by Andrew Mellon in 1920. This was after World War I. Inflation was tremendous, and we went into a depression in 1920. Andrew Mellon came back after Calvin Coolidge asked him about it, and he said, well, you've got to do two things. Number one is you've got to cut the taxes to the people, and you have to cut government spending. You have to do both of those. You can't do one or the other. You have to do both of them. So they did. They dropped the top marginal tax rate on the top rich, greedy 1%. They dropped that top marginal rate from over 50% down to 25%. They eliminated taxes for the bottom 30%, I want to say. It may have been 25%. And they brought down taxes across the board. But then they also slashed government spending in half. Most of that came from defense spending because they no longer had to build all these battleships for war. We were done. World War One was over. Nobody foresaw World War Two. It kind of put us in a bind when World War Two kicked off because a lot of contracts were canceled and we didn't have enough ships and this, that, and the other. But we had to build back up during the war. Another story. But they slashed the budget by 50% and they reduced taxes. And we were out of that depression in 1 quarter. It was done, over with. And that's what made the Roaring Twenties roar. Then along came the stock market crash, and then later on the Great Depression and all that other stuff,
In the New Deal,
and the New Deal and everything else,
which was
which screwed everybody. We
Mhm.
had a depression within a depression. FDR did not get us out of the Great Depression. World War II did, but that's another side story. Anyway, as far as Reagan and trickle down economics are concerned, he wanted to use Andrew Mellon's model. He wanted the tax cuts, and he also wanted the spending cuts. He got his tax cuts, but Congress refused to cut spending. And in fact, they doubled down on it. They didn't quite double the spending. But when you're saying here that I'm wrong, Jim, you can do your own research. The 8 years of Ronald Reagan and 4 years of George Bush, the first one, 12 years, that was a 12-year era of the highest non-wartime economic growth in American history. The economy boomed. And that's a fact. You can just take that to the bank and retire on it. The last iteration of it 6 years ago, that was not supply side or trickle down economics.
what are we
Didn't
talking
happen.
about?
I think
What,
he's talking about the tax overhaul that happened under Trump. That was not trickle down economics, and that was not supply side economics. And you're right about this, Jim. What works is the spending power of the population that makes demand for the goods. You're absolutely right. They have to have jobs and they have to have money to do that. Cutting taxes. That's one thing about people. When you cut taxes and allow people to have more of their own money, they spend it. They spend it. So that's all there is to it. And stop the class warfare, please, Jim.
yeah. So you know, there's different ideas on how to organize society, and it's varied among the population into more and more different categories and so on and so forth. And the problem is always, one of the main problems is always where that revenue or tax money that goes into the coffers of the government, and then it redistributes it, and keeps it for its function and all that. It all has to do with how much and how little, and who does it serve, and who's being served by it. And there's all these things that is a push and tug, um, and people have different ideas and stuff, passionately
Mm-hmm.
so.
Sure.
Um, with all that said, because we know that that's sort of a fair assessment in a broad way, because it's very broad what I just said. It's
Mm-hmm.
very broad.
Sure.
I'm not an economist and whatnot, but
No, I'm not an economist either, but I do watch and I do read. And when people say things, I do my research and I can come back and say, no. Created 0 jobs, but CEOs, executives, and investment firms made out like bandits. That's just flat out false. That's just flat out wrong. We had the lowest unemployment in U.S. history. Fact. Check it with the Department of Labor. Fact. The lowest unemployment in U.S. history. U.S. history. COVID wiped all that out. 100% of it. The minute we shut down the economy and closed down restaurants, closed down bars, closed down entertainment wholesale, I mean, there are still businesses around here that will never reopen. They got closed down and the people ran out of money. They spent their savings to try to keep the lights turned on, but with no clientele to sell to or to service, they're just gone. We
So,
closed down the economies
oh,
and that
it
killed
was
us.
it killed the world.
Mm-hmm.
It killed
Yeah, and that's
everybody.
worldwide. That is worldwide. Yes.
It killed everybody because if you don't, and the restrictions were, regardless of the good intention or not good intention or whatever one wants to think about governments enacting restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
um the fact that people weren't able to freely or as freely buy and sell independently according to the models and needs of groups within society that purchase, I don't know, TVs and pasta and whatever the case might be, just anything and everything, that that anarchy from the bird's eye view of humans doing commerce,
Mm-hmm.
the fact of governments around the world, I know
Mm-hmm.
the reason for it, but the fact that governments shut it down for this greater good,
Mm-hmm. And
um,
and look what happened.
caused
Mm-hmm.
this painful scenario that we live under. But the norm, it would be for humans to do commerce uninterrupted as much as possible,
Mm-hmm.
because everybody knows what's in their best interest, even when they don't know what's in their best interest. Um, it's still better than it's better to allow people to buy and sell as they so choose, and for people to win and lose and make money and lose money and so on. But then you have people that are concerned of um, those in society that can't get a leg up,
Yeah.
and there is that concern.
Sure.
So then you have the world of safety nets and stuff. So there is without, if there was no, if there, I'll just finish with this. If there was much less darn corruption in every stinking corner, anywhere humans, especially
Mm-hmm.
in government, because government is made of, if there was less corruption and bad intentions and side deals in government, and that's not going to happen. We could trust government more to do the right thing, but that's not going to happen either, because government made up of individuals are
Oh,
corruptible like people
but
in
they
public life. And here's the key: no solution um, is suitable for all humans.
no, because every government department and every government agency has their own interests, and they have to protect those interests. You know, you want working for the Department of the Interior, and you want to know, well, how did the wheat crop do this year? You can't find that out from the Department of the Interior. You got to go to the Department of Agriculture and get those statistics. And they're not getting, well, why do you want that? They got to protect their interests. They're not just going to give you that information. So you have all these different government agencies trying to protect their own interests. And a lot of times it's the left hand not speaking to the right hand. And what seems like just common sense to you and me doesn't prevail, because they have to protect their own interests, because the minute somebody figures out that those interests they're protecting are not necessary, that whole agency is just gone. And we can't have that. Our phony baloney jobs depend on this. We have to be protective, you know.
Let me
I
ask this.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead. No, no, no. You go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to make one comment. Jim, I don't know how much you know about the U.S. economy, but that is also just wage stagnation. No, I mean I've watched wages around here almost double because people are looking for employees. They're begging for employees. It's hard for me to say wage stagnation when I'm seeing McDonald's has a sign up there saying now hiring, and I can take a picture of it if you'd like, $14 an hour after 30 days training. You know, I mean that a year ago that job was paying 750 an hour. They're
The
begging for employees.
the biggest pressures that I see. I'm going to be very frank. I mean, I usually am, but I'm going to be extra frank. Um, Hi, I'm Frank. No, I'm kidding.
Mhm.
Um, I had to. I had to.
Or you be frank, I'll be earnest.
No, I'm gonna be very frank. To me,
Mhm.
and I'm limited to the brain between my big ears and my observation and my experience and all these things. To me, it seems that the biggest pain in the side
Mhm.
of the average citizen, without them necessarily paying attention to it, or maybe they are,
Mhm.
is a third party involved in everything that they do, which is the government.
Some of it is
Although
government. A lot of it is government. Yeah, but there's other outside forces. Go ahead.
this is from my brain. There's other. Let me just lay out my case. My case. When they involve themselves, and we need government, right? Um, we're not anarchists here. Um, People make a case for anarchy, but it's just But we need people that are honorable, decent, and respectful of the laws that encapsulate and are enshrined in our respective systems. And I'm speaking particularly in the United States, because it just it confines itself to certain
Sure.
standards that are standards. Um, People that are good and honest in reference to honoring the limitations that are placed on them as government officials and so on. But we don't see that.
Mhm.
We see people taking advantage of the power that they do have
Mhm.
in order to excel in their financial lives by way of the tool of the power position that they have. So, um, and they protect themselves by doing all sorts of hokey pokey, watching each other's back and creating a wall between them and citizenry, where the citizens become, just what they are, struggling to. So, what I've seen is that due to the actions of government, and maybe they're decent, the intention is decent, that unexpected consequences
Mhm.
occur
Yeah.
because you're having a few people, and there's no escaping this. So I'll just I'll get to the conclusion of my thing. You're having a few people that are supposed to be the most excelled in their fields in society, that have, and it's really not true. They just are good at gaining the votes to get up there and being funded by, yes,
Yeah.
interests and so on. Um, a few cannot predict by any stretch of anybody's imagination. Just like I can't predict what's best for Mark, I have opinions on how Mark should live his life. I
Mhm.
I mean, I really don't, Mark, but I'm saying,
Well,
like,
that's a fine. You'll be ignored in the order in which they're received. So.
I have opinions on how Mark is best to utilize his time in life at each waking moment from my perspective. And I'm going to go ahead and counsel Mark via, he's got to do, in order to behave in such a way that I think that is proper for him to act throughout his day. That is the that is the definition approaching the definition of tyranny because I'm missing one ingredient, which is a gun, the use of intimidation, force, and so on in order to get Mark to comply with the better good that I
Mhm.
think that I'm doing for Mark. If I think that I'm doing it for good, but the reality is that these government officials use power for their favor, and they may have some good involved, but they don't know what's good for the. It's an unreasonable scenario that we're involved in this experiment. But I'm going to conclude here. But in any time in our history, have we not had now, within these decades and century, the most prosperous,
Mhm.
broadly speaking,
Mhm.
existence for the majority of people
Yeah.
in the world through the capitalistic, and
Well,
yes, many people, but through this capitalistic experiment that we've gone on? Have do we not have plenty, even when we're darn poor, for the
yeah.
most majority of people?
We started off this episode talking about somebody who was complaining about, well, she wasn't complaining, she was glorying in the fact that that food processing plant burned down. Doesn't affect me because I eat all natural. We are so prosperous, we can be picky and turn our noses up at certain kinds or brands of food. So, yes, you're 100% right on that. Um, and Jim, I'm just going to say you're going off in several different directions. I can directly rebut that. I can directly rebut that. I agree with you more than we disagree on this one. But it's several different directions. What you're probably not seeing there, and I have studied this because I had discussions with somebody on this subject too. I went and I looked and I've studied on this. What you're not seeing or what you're not paying attention to is the fact that they are shipping record numbers of product, record levels of product. Yes, their profits doubled. Look at how much product they shipped out. It also doubled. And this goes back into the 1920s. For every dollar of revenue they bring in, their profit is 10 cents. All the way back to the 1920s. And the latest numbers I've seen were 2018. In 1920s, for every dollar they brought in, their profit was 10 cents. In the 1930s, same thing. 40s, same thing. 50s, same thing. The reason they keep doubling their profits is because they keep doubling the amount of product they ship and sell. It's more than just your gas station. It's heating oil, it's fuel oil, it is oil and gas to power plants. It is, you name the diesel fuel, the bunker C, the heating oil, everything. We are using more plastic than we ever have. That's a petroleum product. They are shipping more product everywhere of all different kinds. It's more than just gasoline. It's chemicals, it's plastics, it's byproducts, it's paint thinner, it's you name it. You cannot get away from petroleum products. They're shipping record numbers of product, but their profit margin is still 10 cents of every dollar that they bring in. They're just bringing in more dollars because they're selling more product.
Um, this has nothing to do with anything, but it kind of does in a loose way. And Greg has some things that he said. I don't know if you'll share them or not.
Yes,
Just,
I will. Yes,
but
I will.
I just want to mention this thing. Humans uh, has nothing to do with anything, but kind of does loosely. But it's just a side note. Humans are such that we're all here making subtle points and not so subtle points, um, in the affirmative and in the negative towards different issues that are
Mm-hmm.
so complex. Um, and at the end of the day, we're just us, right? Like we're
Mm-hmm.
individuals. One time I drove up to years and years ago. I was practically a kid, um, to a supermarket, and I got out, and there was a guy there, and he said, "You know what? I can't feed my family." This was like sometime in the mid '90s, or I
Mm-hmm.
can't feed my family. I'm like, I lost my job and
Mm-hmm.
so on. And he's an older gentleman. I was a younger guy, and I gotta feed my family and stuff, and it's and if you could spare some money. And I said, you know what? I said in my mind, I said, you know what? Let's solve this guy's thing for at least a week. I said, you know what? Come with me. Check this out. Come with me. We're gonna go into that grocery store. I'm gonna get you what you need for your groceries for a week. Come on, let's go. And he says, no, 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 just let me have the
Uh-huh.
money. And I looked at him. I was probably like in my early 20s,
Mm-hmm.
practically a teen, out of being. And I looked at him. And I said, see ya. And I left. I was quite willing
Mm-hmm.
to take the guy into the store. I was There's a few things to this. Quite willing, without any um insistence by anyone except
Mm-hmm.
my personal
Yeah.
choice, um good nature,
Mm-hmm.
which I believe, let's not even go into, um
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with me. It's my disposition, um to pay for that guy's stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
But he wanted the money.
Right.
He was full of crap. So
Basically.
yeah, so um a few things there. Number one, human beings, you know depending on their station in life, would be willing to or not willing to, a whole host of different things to their fellow
Sure.
man, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
We These things are very complicated, and at the key of it is that who gets to hold the power or the money,
Mm-hmm.
and distribute it, um the excess money. But all that money and all that power is offered from the people by consent to be governed, such as the situation here in the United States. And and it's in our lifetime. Long story short, in our lifetime, we are living the best scenario with all the faults,
Warts and all.
warts and all. We're actually living the
Mm-hmm.
best time. And I could make the argument that, in specifically, I want things better because things are screwed up at the same time. But in the long lens,
Mm-hmm.
we're actually living
But you
the
see, that's how good of a life we're living, that we can complain about the things that are screwed up. We don't have government agents beating on the door because we opened our mouths. You and I are sitting here talking to the whole world. The whole world's not watching, but we're putting it out there. We're
yeah.
putting our opinions out there. We have no fear of any kind of reprisal.
No, if not, we
Neither
wouldn't do it. If not, we wouldn't do it.
neither one of us is waiting for sirens outside the door, you know? So we're pretty blessed. We're pretty comfortable,
Uh,
you know?
but I will say this to that you just said.
Mhm.
We're not worried about that,
No.
but our impact currently, as we see it,
Hmm.
is not sufficient for those
Well,
that
okay.
would come and suppress. Because, so what I'm getting at is this: the higher one climbs on the total pole of society, up
Hmm.
there where the air is rarefied,
Uh-huh.
as the song goes, Frank Sinatra, um, that is where the movers and shakers and pistoleros are at, to say, whoa, 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 buddy, now you're opening your trap. And so powers, and so those
But
people up there. But the majority of people get to express themselves pretty decently.
but as you watch those people as they get more and more popular and they start increasing their station, the quieter they get about certain things. There are exceptions.
That
There are
is true.
exceptions.
That is
But they
true.
know they have to play the game and they have to protect their image. They
That is
have to
true.
start being quieter and quieter and quieter. You are, there are exceptions. You've got your,
Hang on that. Hang on that. That is key,
hmm
in my opinion.
yeah,
Um, we disagree on a lot of things, but
hmm
I think we agree on much more than we disagree. I can
oh,
say
for
that
sure.
pretty confident, on certain topics, and maybe others not. That is a key. The more I kind of agree with that a lot,
Hmm.
the further up. the potential of it. The further
Mhm.
up you climb in the business or political or whatever world, these people, in order to arrive at where they're at, need to have,
They got to play the game.
they have to play the game, and that in itself is the machine, the gears grinding
Thank
it
you.
up, right?
Thank you.
So that once you arrive at a certain place, you're stuck.
You are a part of that machine. You are a
Yeah.
gear in that machine. And you, instead of fighting the man, you are the man. You
Hmm.
have become the man.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the problem with human beings, and the problem with power, and the problem with everything.
Well, but it's further than that because everything you say becomes a political statement, whether politics is
Yeah.
involved or not. You can sit there and say, you know what, I absolutely love asparagus. And 50% of people are going to say, I do too. I love asparagus. But a certain percentage are going to say, what the hell's wrong with broccoli?
Yeah. Oh, for
You
sure.
hate broccoli, don't you? I know that's what it is. You're one of those grass people. You like grasses. You don't like flowering vegetables, you know. So so that's why you can see a lot of them, not all, obviously, but you see a lot of them just getting quieter and quieter the bigger they become. You know, you're gonna have your Sarah Silvermans.
Yeah.
You're gonna have people who are not afraid to say anything. They don't care. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. But then you watch them get to a certain level and they just kind of stagnate. And then pretty soon it's like, Sarah who? Meanwhile, back at the ranch, you got this other person who maybe wanted to fight the machine, but has now looked around and said, you know what? It's pretty comfortable between these two gears. Let me just hush. They get a little bit of experience. They become a part of the machine and they go, oh, that's why they do it that way. I better shut up and cool my jets if I expect to work again next year.
You have to be a diplomat.
You do. You have to be a diplomat. You have to work with people you don't like. You have to do things you don't like. But if you want to continue to do what you're doing, you'll do it.
And most people, I don't know this is a fact, I'm saying most people, but it seems like an obvious thing to go at. Most people don't want to interact with people they dislike.
Right.
Most people don't want to make decisions that impact so many people.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are regular people, like the norm. They just
Yep.
want to live their lives and not be extremely put out by the signs of the times.
Yeah. Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
Oh, yeah.
most
Let's
people.
get to some of these comments here.
Okay.
Um, you were talking about Greg.
Yeah.
Said you're starting to look like Salvador Dali. Must be all that genealogy research in Spain. I think you
I'm
watched the Prince. I think you watched The Princess Bride again, Greg. He is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
it's
Excellent movie.
it's an
Excellent.
it's inevitable. It's inevitable that so a few years ago, I'll say quick, a few years ago, it was the focus on the videos, and the content was the woodworking mainly proper, and so, but the shift, it's unavoidable. You are labeled by whatever you're doing, because in fact whatever you're doing represents where you're at. So,
Yeah.
guilty is charged.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Guilty is charged.
Let me throw this in here. Jim Dockrell saying, when you're familiar with the price of meat versus the price the farmer gets, you're 100% right, but that's got nothing to do with government. That's 100% three big processing consortiums, basically price fixing. And they're paying the cattle rancher, the uh, pig farmer, one certain set price per pound for beef. And the cattle ranchers are like, look, all my expenses have gone up. I can't take that. And they're like, take it or leave it. So you have a lot of cattle ranchers that are getting out of ranching. They're done. They're finished with it because, and then you have a lot of processors that don't want to buy 20, 30, 40, 50 head. I mean, we've got a friend who is a cattle rancher in Idaho, and that's part of his problem. He's just getting out of it. He can't compete. He can't sell, and there's a certain span in there where they can sell cattle for beef. After that, it's gone past. They can't sell, you know, except for at a super, super, super low price. So, what some of them are starting to do is they're forming co ops. And to address Steve's point, farmer can make more. All he has to do is open a butcher shop and market it and sell it direct. He gets less because he's not selling direct. There's some truth to that. And that's why a lot of these cattle ranchers are getting together and forming co ops, and they're starting to do just that. So
Um,
they're saying, screw the big processors. We're going to do it ourselves.
to give Jim not an olive branch, but kind of like to see where the barometer is, um, and yourself as well, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I do see. I haven't thought it through properly, but I do see a huge problem,
Mm-hmm.
potential problem, and I'm saying it before I've even thought of it through, um, where all the major companies, and I'm talking about like the major companies, coalesce into one and become so powerful that just that you're saying there, all the mom and pops, to say it, a certain way, fall off the map,
Yep.
off the sides of the earth into the abyss, and what we're left is this just this
The
one.
store.
Right, the store, it all converges, and they set the prices, and not only that, they basically merge with government, maybe not in visual obviousness, but in
Well,
that they get to tell government what's what, because they're the ones that run the farm. They're the ones
well,
that feed the people and so on.
we
I
do
do
have
see a problem there.
we do have laws against that. They're called antitrust laws. And they have to go through everything. And a lot of mergers have been turned down because it was seen as forming a monopoly. I mean, heck, they tried to break up Microsoft because they said it was a monopoly. And that resulted in the worst operating system in the world, Windows ME. So we saw how that went. But what we're talking about is monopolistic practices and not price gouging, price fixing. And that's what these three big meat processors are doing. And the reason they're getting away with it is because the small cattle rancher doesn't have representation. So when you've got the lobbyists from these big three processors going to Congress saying, nothing to see here, just, return to your homes, nothing to see here, nobody is showing them the other side, so they're not touching it. They're not doing anything. I won't say they're not aware of it, because a couple of Congress people are aware of it and they are screaming about it. But when you got two, three, four voices amongst 500, they're being drowned out by other things that Congress says is more important. So that's part of it. Now, I have noticed that meat prices are coming down. I mean, I was absolutely shocked that here in the Pacific Northwest, it finally got to the point to where salmon was cheaper than beef, which has never been the case here.
Mhm.
Well, it's come back down again, and it's starting to get back down to something not insulting anymore. It went from criminal to insulting to, are you friggin' kidding me? We're back down to, are you friggin' kidding me? So, where pork, I was looking at the price earlier today and we were grocery shopping, where I'm used to paying $1.35, $1.40 a pound for pork. It's at 2.20, down from 4.20 that it was a few weeks ago.
There's also
Beef is
another
down from 14, $15 a pound to $6 and $7 a pound. So it is coming down.
there's also another issue with the value of the dollar
Yes.
dropping, so you get less bang for your buck.
Hmm.
People have to give up more of that that money in order to acquire those same
Right.
items.
And
Um,
that's inflation. Yeah.
inflation. And so there's so many things, but we live here.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing all this stuff. But like I said earlier, if we take a look in the bigger scheme of things,
Mm-hmm.
people weren't doing so hot 120, 130 years ago.
Oh no.
And the further back you go, things get
Mhm.
extremely, but just the same. And that's not to say, you know, ooh la la, everything's great and whatever. But it is to say that in comparison to most of history,
Mhm.
this we're living high on the
We very large, very large.
but if we were to compare today right now with our respective societies, countries and so on, and turn our eyes to South America and look at places like Venezuela and so on,
Oh
and
yeah,
the situations that they're dealing with because of so much influence from government, because over there it's the tool of government or the tool of money at these great, but it's government because they have the laws that the people follow and military and so on and so forth. And so businessmen in these positions are squeezing the lifeblood out of their populations and stuff, concurrent with our situation that we live in, where I can go and find as many, even now, even though we couldn't find toilet paper a few months ago or whatever,
yeah,
um, we could still find X amount of products and this and that everywhere. It
sure,
wasn't like end of the world. It seemed like it, but in contrast to other places that authority has such a grip because they're the
yeah,
ones that are doing well for their people. The reality is that their people are doing crap. Their people are like
yeah.
they're being consumed by
They're killing
poverty,
each other for food. They're killing each
right?
other for cans of food.
Right. Whereas
Literally.
before, literally, whereas before, people were more autonomous. The government didn't have that control. Um, you can't plan the lives of so many people. You have to allow for a bit of the chaos of people going about the business of buying and selling and seeing how it best fits their lives and so on. But you do need government to maintain a certain level, but it's a balance. That is an extreme. We're not ooh la la happy at the moment
Yeah.
necessarily, but
And
for the most part, the idea of keeping the checks and balances that our society has um, is a relatively decent idea for the grand majority of people to live fairly. You can have a TV and a refrigerator and have food in that refrigerator and maybe go
yeah,
bowling once a week or once a month.
well,
That is not that. And internet, and that's not people.
99.9% of us are not concerned about where tomorrow's dinner is coming from. You
Right.
know, 99.9% of us are not weaving little mats out of grass they picked on the side of the road so they can go to a mud puddle and hopefully strain out a good portion of the yuck that's in that puddle to get drinking water. You know,
Yeah.
most of us have a place where we can take care of bodily functions that is sanitary. So we're compared to the rest of the world, I won't include Europe because Europe's in much the same position we're in. Compared to the rest of the world, we're doing all right. And we're doing so all right, we can afford to take the time to argue the other BS.
Yeah. And that's not to say that there's not danger always at the door,
Well, sure.
because there is, and that's not to say that there's not people in great harm's way economically and so on within the
Oh,
standards that exist in our respective countries. And it is not to say that there's not injustices that occur
oh, sure.
daily, because there is.
People are people. People are
Yeah,
still people. And between the US and Canada, we've got approximately, though, 400 million people. Each one of us is just trying to get along through the next day to get along with life. Get the job done that we have to get done so we can get home, be with our families, and take care of our business that we have to do at home. 400 million individuals just doing what we got to do and hoping for as little interference as possible, no matter who it's from, whether it's the guy at the Department of Motor Vehicles, but or the guy down at the local convenience store that can't find the right chocolate bar that we want to get for the kid. We're just hoping to plot our way through life and maybe get 50,000 miles out of the set of tires we just put on the car. So, we got to do what we got to do.
Yeah.
I will throw one more up here. Um, Jim said the lobbyists are also asking if the representatives what their contributions to their campaigns again too, and that's true. That is 100% true. That's 100% true. According to the USDA, more than 38 million people, including 12 million children, are food insecure. What do they consider food insecure? If you consider, and that's not 10%, we have 330 million people in this country. That's not even close to 10%. Well, no, I take that back. 38 million people. What do they consider food insecure? There are people who are living at or below the poverty level, but the poverty level is a number they establish. You take that poverty level and you apply it to Miami, yeah, you're screwed. But you take that poverty level and you bring it out to my house,
Hey, hey,
you're going to
hey,
do just fine.
hey. To be frank, I to be frank, I I fall into that according to what I my income and everything, and
Mhm.
according to where I live. I'm to be frank with you guys. I mean, we're all um, I'm I'm considered destitute roughly,
Mhm.
economically speaking, and yet I have an air conditioner, television, monitor, internet, high speed, telephone, refrigerator full of food. Um, yeah, my car is put together with what you call duct tape and such and this and that. Um, but uh,
But
I could if I wanted to right now, if it was open, I could go to Walmart and stuff. And so even though I'm saying all that, I still fall in the bracket of not doing so well, and yet I'm pretty grateful.
the difference is, that, you recognize that, and you know what you could do to change that.
Yeah, I'm fine.
You do that by choice.
Yeah, I'm
I know
totally
you.
fine.
I know you live well below your means.
I'm a very basic person. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. There's a chart. I'll just say this last thing, and I'm being very frank. That's not something you would say publicly, like people would normally say. I don't. I don't. I am not motivated by certain incentives such as money and and this and that. There's the Greg is going to probably snarl as there's a test part of the DNA studies that they do, and one of them is called um, something to the effect of how motivated are you for gain, for it's within that realm, and it depends on the genetics that you have a propensity. It doesn't mean that you don't or you do. And for this gain thing, how much are you motivated for with gain? And my needle is like to the bottom. I am my incentive. Um, I'm not saying that I don't like money and I don't like I like things and money and this and that. It's just that I don't like things enough
Mm-hmm.
to the point that I'm willing to what you say
Sacrifice for it.
sacrifice my ethics for it or sacrifice my ideas for it and stuff. That's not also to say that that could change, right? From one moment to the
Exactly.
next in a certain situation, but generally speaking, I'm not motivated by such things.
Well, exactly. You keep driving the car that you're driving now because you're not motivated to go get another one.
Yeah, it also says one of the studies, and some of them are suggestive, and other ones are high on so there's variations and stuff. There's one that says how willing are you to publicly screw yourself over? I'm paraphrasing, it's not that, but how willing are you to, in the face of uh, genetically, they've done studies on all those things, and it just so like, as far as I'm willing to risk popularity at the risk of saying what I actually think, um, and I think that that's true for the most part, even though I what do you call
Self-censor.
a self censor. So some of the stuff that you see genetically, I could associate. Other stuff maybe not so much, and it all depends. Whatever. Whatever. Let's continue.
Greg says you're motivated by zombie movies.
I sent him a funny thing the
Oh,
other
okay.
day about
Okay, Jim clarified here. He says food insecure, not having enough to eat in the last week. I take a lot of those with a grain of salt because, again, you're relying on the USDA, a government institution who doesn't even know the names of all 50 states, let alone how these people are doing. And those are estimates. I don't think it's 10%. If it was, okay, if it's 10%, that tells me people aren't looking because everybody around here anyway is screaming for employees. They're begging for employees. Everybody is hiring. Linda went to Guitar Center today to get some earplugs, musicians' earplugs. Two guys standing behind the counter. She asked them for help. They said, we're technically not on the clock. We can't help you. We're not on the clock. A guy came out of the back room. They flagged him down, and he helped Linda find the earplugs that she was looking for. He says, yeah, I'm sorry. We're really short staffed. We're really begging for employees. So it's just me and one other guy. And the other guy was breaking down a display and putting up another one.
right.
So if there are 38 million people food insecure, if that statistic is true, and I'm not doubting you, Jim, if that statistic is true, that tells me there are 38 million people who aren't trying because the jobs are out there. They are out there.
I would be careful, me, in that assumption on those people or that estimate of people,
With
and I would, and say that within that 10%, let's for argument's sake, it could be less, it could be more, but that 10%, there's a percentage, roughly speaking, that would apply to what you just said, and then there's other circumstances, and you could divide the pie in more ways. So I would, because the suggestion, we don't know all the factors involved, just like we don't know all the factors involved for people that make all
right.
this money, and that
Yep.
they would spend it wisely or not, which
Well,
is none of our business. We don't know on the other, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I base my opinion on the number of programs out there from our own government, to include the USDA, for food, welfare, housing, all of that stuff. If you live in the United States right now and you know you can't get aid for dependent children, something is wrong. If you don't know that, something is wrong. You're either not trying or you're talking to the wrong people who are just lying to you. We have so many
services.
programs and
Yeah.
services out there for those people. I mean, when and that's overseen by the USDA. So that tells me they're not doing their job. And they broke out the party hats a few years back when they said, yes, we have 45 million people on food stamps, or what, they don't call them food stamps anymore. Really? You're celebrating the fact that 45 million people need food stamps? You're celebrating that? You thought that was a good thing? How about you get out of the way and let these people work? You know?
There's a lot of factors involved, and again, I'm not an economist and such.
I do
There's so
too.
many factors we don't know, like all these things, the amount, the living cost in a city, where people just happen to be, and then the amount of like rent that they need to pay, as
Mhm.
opposed to the jobs and the amount that they pay. We don't know
Understood.
the influence of taxation
No,
or
we
the
don't.
like. There's all these things that are so like tumultuous that it's difficult
Right.
to, we don't have the capacity to,
And there
you know.
isn't one answer. There isn't one answer. There are so many different factors and so many different variables. How many of these people are handicapped? How many of them can't work? How many of them can't get around? You do have people who are infirm, not physically, but have mental issues. I mean, you have family dynamics, you have a whole slew of different variables involved. And to your point, and it's just proof of your point, somebody sitting in Washington cannot decide what's best for those people when they don't even know who these people are. They don't know where they live, they don't know what they're paying, they don't know any of this stuff. But if truly, and I'm not doubting your word, Jim, if truly 10% of our population is worried about where their next meal is coming from, they are not doing their job. I don't, not necessarily those people, but these people on these big government things who are proud of having 45 million people on aid. Well, if there's 38 million people that you say are at risk, you're not doing your job.
and
Why
and,
are
and
we paying you?
I would go on a I would go on a limb, because I don't think that it's reality. That's the problem. But in a perfect world,
Boom.
oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Jim was quoting, not necessarily quoting, but he was also referring to CNBC, CBPP, the Washington Post, and Steve reminded him most of these sources are getting their info from the government. They all took them from the same USDA website you saw. You know.
It, okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're
No, I just wanted to say, in a look, in honestly, like, to all of you guys, I look. So we only live one life. There's a reality, and then there's what I would want.
hmm
In a perfect world, I don't want people to suffer. I don't want people
right.
I don't want anybody to suffer. I don't want anybody to hurt. And any, I mean, we only live one life, and so in a perfect, and this is like speaking of like ideals of, but the truth is different. You know, everybody should be happy. Everybody should have everything. Um, like, I can see that as something that a human being would intrinsically in their heart want. You don't want to see people dragging on the floor. You don't want to see all these things.
No.
But the reality is that we live in a world with wolves,
hmm
and compassion is a tool that wolves use and see as weakness in order for them
Right.
to be wolves, to eat everybody,
Sep-
to
separate
t-
the weakest from the herd.
and
Exactly.
to take the herd and pitch it against itself while they live high on the hog. It just, there's so much evil in those terms, that the only way to, I just, according to my family, people with nice words went and did a whole society up, hatchet style, um for ideals,
hmm
the use of ideals, pitching people against. So it's hard for one to, but ideally you would want everybody freaking happy, um
Right.
and good natured, and but it's not the real world that we live
I
in.
was
We
going to say, because that just basically denies reality, and that some people just will never be happy. Doesn't matter what they have, how much of it, where it came from, or who paid for it. They will never be happy because they're afraid somebody might have, do, see, or be something that they can't do, see, be. They just cannot be happy.
Yeah, I mean, that's what that's the thing that I see. People with good intentions.
Well,
um
what's the road to hell paved with?
yeah, and the reason that saying is powerful, and although it's used a lot, but that it's a powerful saying, is the bit where literally a person with good intentions
hmm
ends up paving the way to unspeakable horrors. And
Mhm.
why is that? In part, it's because a person setting out to chart that course of action for others.
Right. Totally oblivious to the unintended consequences, and even go so far as denying.
Right. It's a very dangerous thing. That's kind
So,
of why I've gone the I try to go at least in thinking the libertarian mindset, where it's you know what, but not everybody can do that, and not everyone is programmed to do that. It's not
well,
natural for. But I think it's the least evil that one could do is to leave other people alone, regardless.
yeah, and and I'll agree with that. I just want to be left alone. Just
You're
leave
like,
me to my devices. Leave me to my. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not bothering anybody.
yeah.
Don't be looking in my backyard. You might see me out there digging a hole wearing shorts, and you don't nobody want to see that.
We don't
So
want to
just
be we don't want to be embroiled in some sort of like flash civil war, chopping heads off, and like we want to live
yeah,
as
just
cordial as possible.
just leave me alone. Don't worry about what I'm doing. Tend to your own rat killing, as my mother used to say. And everybody is better off for it. So we've been at we're at 2 hours 45 minutes. We need to wrap this up
You're a
big time.
monster. You're a
I'm
monster.
a monster. I'm horrific. I know, dude. I've been married twice. I've got 5 kids, 7 grandkids. There ain't a thing you can call me I ain't heard before. It's my fault and I'm used to it. But you know what? I don't care.
All right, so I'm gonna wrap it. We go live every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time here on YouTube, Trampled Underfoot Podcast show on YouTube. We have a website by the same name, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. You can catch our past episodes by pressing the Wayback Machine button. And we also have a Facebook page where you can check out our posts over there or leave suggestions on future show ideas. We're also sponsored by.
Harneal Media, your one stop website shop. He hates it when I say that. He hasn't run it past his new partner. I don't know what she's going to say. She's going to say, knock it off, probably. But it's too late. It's out there. I said it and I'm glad. Hey, no, serious. If you want a website, if you want a web presence, maybe you already have a web presence, but you really are like me and don't know what the heck you're doing. Steve is your man. His prices are more than competitive. They are excellent. The service is 100% personal. When you deal with Harneal Media, you deal with one guy, Steve. He'll take care of you. If you want a web store to sell your merchandise, he can take care of that. You want a web shop where you can put up merch, t-shirts, baseball caps, coffee cups, whatever. He is your man. Talk to Steve Nealon at Harneal Media. That's HARNEAL media.com, sponsor of the Trampled Underfoot podcast.com website.
All right, awesome. Listen, I want to thank all of you guys. I really enjoy the idea challenges. Um, Obviously, we all have so many different things that we've experienced and arrived at conclusion wise, and just so many things. But I I'm thankful for you guys out there, for Mark, for all of you. I'm really thankful because you know it's it's an exceptional thing in it from my viewpoint that people can address these things in such a cordial way, even when one gets heated and stuff. That's
Well, we
cool
get
too.
passionate, but
But I really enjoy it. It stimulates the mind.
mhm.
It makes one think. It challenges one's own belief and stuff. And so it's all great. So I really want to thank all of you guys um, for hanging out. And I think we've gone epically overboard with time. So
Yeah, we have.
should we boogie?
Um, well, I tell you what do you think of inviting folks to come chat with us offline? We won't be live. You can just invite them to our hangout and
Yeah,
BS with us. What do you think of that?
yeah. If you guys want, we'll
Okay.
send you the link.
Here's the link right here. I will take it out in a few minutes. We're going to end the broadcast, but we'll be hanging out in this studio. Come join us if you'd like. You need a camera, mic, speakers, and just come BS with us.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be about the subject we're
Yeah, we can
talking.
talk about
It's just
anything.
to hang out and whatever.
Hmm.
Or you can talk about whatever the hell you want. You know what?
Yeah.
It's your life. You do what you
Hmm.
want.
Let's talk about the 64 color box of Crayolas with the built-in sharpener on the back.
All right, we're ready to boogie.
We're
We'll,
ready
we'll,
to boogie.
we'll be here, but it'll be an after show thing, so you guys can
Yes.
use the link to get in.
Okay.
See ya.
All right. See ya. Peace.